Crazy kids and your otter.
Thank you. Thank you for recording. So, hey there.
Hello, it is I.
But we just did a
Rob.
You were getting prepared to do a connection course call, like a couple breaths. Might be worth doing.
Do you want to do just like 5 minutes of eye gazing to start off?
5 minutes might be a little much.
and people just have to watch us stare into each other's eyes very deeply.
This isn't going to be, the video is not going up, but the audio will.
Oh, wait, is the video not going on like YouTube or something?
Not the video, no.
Yeah.
I only do audio, bro.
Why?
This space is for people who have paid me or are my friends. Yeah. I mean, that's a whole other conversation.
I forget that you're a pseudonymous. I don't know how to pronounce that word. Yeah. I always forget that.
Yeah. There's my front end is anonymous. And then, as you know, having bought things from me, like, you very much get a real person experience after that. But
what if we set you up as like one of those like when they interview anonymous people and will like obscure your voice and like cast you in shadow?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That could be fun.
Yeah, the thing is, like, I could just turn off my video and then record as a fucking avatar, but I don't want to do that for the sake of our conversation.
That's fair.
So,
right, well, let's roll.
Yeah. All right. So we are recording. Da-da-da. People, if you've made it this far, you're cool. We are, I guess we're gonna take a couple breaths, huh? You are giggling at. You are the most popular person that I've interviewed so far.
I don't know whether that's an insult or not, but
well,
I'm not particularly popular.
Well, I just mean, like, in the response to my posts about, like, hey, ask questions for this interview, like, you got the most attention. I think you have maybe the biggest audience anyway. And yeah, people were like, oh, as we have all the questions there. So you've got some stands.
Yeah.
Some 1,000 true stands.
I should copyright that.
1,000 true stands.
Kevin Kelly can be the 1,000 true fans guy, and I'll just change one word and be like, no, it's totally a different concept.
Yeah. Yeah. You are the cross between Eminem and Kevin Kelly. So when I started, okay, so let me just speak to this. We have no plan for exactly how this is going to go. What I was about to say is also the questions. We have the questions, but I also did not share them with you until we began this call. So you do not know what the questions are and have not prepared for them. So this is all very on the fly.
Yeah.
Which is cool and fun.
And we're talking about the manifesto.
We're talking about manifesto.
To which you have some antagonistic thoughts.
Perhaps. What should I say? A couple things. One, so when I did this with Sam, the way I started the call was just like, let's lay out the menu of the different things that we could talk about or the different directions we could go. And then, as with the menu, we can be like, oh, that one looks really yummy. Let's go with that. So I think for us, feel free to chime in, right? Like, we've got the questions that other people shared. And then we've got the manifesto. And the manifesto part is kind of just you and my conversation. I don't think the questions are really about the manifesto from other people. They're not about that. So it's maybe even like two separate chunks. Are there any like finer distinctions that you want to throw out there around where we could go?
No, I mean, I assume the conversation around the manifesto is in one sense about marketing and what I'm getting into around non-coercive marketing and that, as well as some of like the emotional work and the, I don't know, sort of the type of things that you're doing in Shift 30. So I mean, like, I feel like there's different ways to like maybe slice that apple, like for people who are more interested in the marketing side of things versus people who are interested in like emotional development, somatic shit.
Right. Well, whichever one you as a listener find yourself in, if it comes second, you'll just have to skip around or stick around, and we'll tease you along. So
I want to talk about the manifesto.
You want to talk about the manifesto first?
Yeah, I want the. Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, it's one of those things. It just feels like.
Oh well, there's one thing I want to say before we like really get into it, but go ahead.
No, I mean, I was just gonna say it feels like it's a conversation that's like 2 or 3 months in the making.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, like, I think it'll be interesting because I don't know, maybe it sounds kind of weird, but I feel vaguely like a different person than the person who wrote it 3 months ago, on account of having gone through AOA and like there's been some emotional shit that's shaken loose that I think was probably reflected in the original that you picked up on. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's what actually I was going to point out was like, you between publishing it and now, you have gone through AOA, which is, in terms of time, that's 8 weeks. In terms of what the fuck happened in that time, it's like light years.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's not even like the least bit surprising that you would say I feel like a different person now than the one that wrote it, let alone the fact that when you initially recorded it, right, like even that, you were in a spot where like you were talking about it a lot, we were talking about it a lot, and you're like, I'm really like trying to write this, and you know, blah blah, and then like, just record it because you are able to talk about it really well, right? So you were in a spot where, and I think maybe it was that recording where you were like, oh man, my audio is so shitty because my AC turned on, despite your professional mic right there, you know? Yeah. So like, you were in a spot there where I mean, this is my words, contradict me if it's wrong, but like, you were not feeling totally free to just like let this stuff out.
I don't know if it's not totally free is the framing I would use. Like, there was resistance.
Yeah.
There was perfectionism of various flavors, like all of it. Like, so I don't know exactly like what I would call it, but I think a lot of it was perfectionism around writing.
Yeah.
And because like, I don't know, you've read it. I put a lot of effort into the writing of that thing and making it flow and using vivid metaphors, which you don't like very much. And yeah, so like, I don't know, like it's one of those things though that like being in that place of paying a lot of attention to the craft of writing
Mm.
gets in, like, very often gets in the way of just like expressing the underlying ideas and getting them all out and
Yeah.
arranged and whatever. And I
Yeah.
always seem to get myself in trouble when I try to smush these various parts of the creative process together and expect them all to just happen at once,
Mm.
which is what I was doing.
Mm. So it's break that out. So you were trying to smush together the writing and the
Yeah, just
what?
like the pure expression of all of the ideas that are in that piece, of like getting them out onto the page in their like rawest form so
Yeah.
that I could start working with them, because
Yeah.
I didn't really have an outline or anything like that for
Mhm.
that one. I just kind of, yeah, I basically just wrote it straight through from like section 1 to section 2 to section 3 to section 3.5 to section 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And yet it does very much have like structure to it. I mean, it has the sections, but then like there's a narrative and everything. So it's
Yeah.
not
And I, yeah, yeah. And I mean, I started fleshing out, like, I don't know, it wasn't totally straight through, but in terms of most of my creative process, like that's how it was. And if I had if I had an idea while writing section 2 of like, oh, that belongs down here, like I would just like go throw it down there.
yeah.
But broadly speaking, it was top down and not
Mhm.
bottom up.
Oh, well, that's an interesting thing to say considering. Have you
Yeah.
finished that book, by the way? Well, I forget the name of it, but all about like bottoms up thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. I read like half of it. I think the one is Why Greatness Cannot Be Planned.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
yeah, it seems to mirror my approach to pretty much everything.
yeah.
But
Um,
I will say, like, because we were talking about like feedback you gave me on a piece a couple weeks before I started writing the manifesto, because it started out as a sales page for the Ungated membership.
yeah.
Um, and I put that, like, I got some feedback from you on that. I put it through Foster, which is like a writing
Yeah.
editing community thing. I don't know how to talk about what the hell Foster is anymore, but there were there were some people in Foster who kind of spurred this on and were like, bro, I like, all of this is conceptually interesting, but I want to hear more of your personal story.
Mm.
Um, and see you like imbue some of these concepts with life, or yeah, like life and story, and hear a little bit more about where you came from. Because
Yeah.
like that's the thing, is like you feel a lot of this in the manifesto as sort of like the underlying ferocity maybe that I feel towards certain things that happen on the internet, certain things that I notice in myself.
Mm.
And
Like
if I
veracity with the F,
is that
like
even a word?
ferocious.
Fer ver yeah, with an F.
F.
Ferocity,
Right, okay.
ferocious. Yeah.
Ferocious. Yeah.
Yeah, or like intensity, or it's maybe intensity, like emotional intensity that I feel towards certain things, like quote unquote the pattern and the way it showed up, that
Yeah.
if I just come out and say it, because I think that was the thing, is like I used the cancer metaphor in that initial piece,
Mm.
and some of the feedback I got was like, bro,
Right.
what do you like, what, like, WTF is this? This is really over the top,
Uh,
which you might still think it is, but like to me, I think filling in my personal journey and showing where I came from and how I've struggled with this thing,
yeah.
not once but not twice, like all the, like in all of these different contexts,
Yeah.
all of that colors why there's such an intensity
Yeah.
and such an emotional background to it. So it is kind of bottom up, right? It started as one thing. I got some interesting like feedback from the world and different people that then like spiraled into the
Yeah.
manifesto.
Yeah. That's an interesting place to start, actually. Since you've since there's been such an experience and time in between writing it and now, how do you feel now about that metaphor in particular of cancer?
I still like the cancer metaphor.
Yeah.
Well, and see, this is the thing, right? Is like I want to make the distinction between this impersonal impersonal force
Mhm.
being a cancer and between like people doing cancerous things. Like I don't want to classify people as cancer. Like I think that's the thing, is something you pointed out, is like I and it's how I think about the culture war. Like I use the cancer metaphor on the culture war a lot because I think it's a like a ravenous cancer that's eating away at the soul of our institutions and our democracy and our ability to solve problems and all of this. And like when conceptualized as something that is impersonal,
Yeah.
it feels it feels like the perfect metaphor in terms of like what cancer is and what it does and how it sort of feasts upon aliveness,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And it just it spreads. It like that's the thing, is that's what cancer does, is it
Right.
spreads and it feasts upon aliveness. And it when I think about what the pattern actually is and how I perceive it spreading across the internet
Yeah.
and how I see it sucking the aliveness out of both people and out of the creative works they put into the world,
Mhm.
creating like this internet that is louder and more full of content and whatever than ever, but vast swaths of it are for all intents and purposes dead.
Mhm.
um for me the metaphor still rings really true, even though it's like yeah, it's kind of a vicious metaphor.
Yeah.
um but it feels true to me.
Yeah. I mean, there was something you said even before I asked you how you felt about cancer, which kind of like opened it up in a new way than anytime I read it. Um, which was just you saying how personal of a metaphor it is, like in relation to like how it affected you, and that the metaphor is a reflection of how that experience was for you. It was cancerous on your life.
Mm,
Something,
okay. Oh,
not that you had never
yeah, yeah.
said that before, but like it suddenly felt like, oh,
Well, yeah.
okay.
And it this is the thing, right? I don't think I'd put this together, is like when you're in sort of like, because I tie everything kind of back to deep okayness, right? Is like, and I think this is a big part of what's changed going through AOA, is like a lot of the underlying cancer that was sort of within me, like a lot of those underlying insecurities and ways that I was at war with myself and just sort of like in yeah, like a lot of those things, like that's what drives the pattern, is our inability to sit with ourselves, our inability to sit with uncertainty, our inability to feel fear and push away. Like I don't know, like it like and I don't know, I don't know if cancer is the right way to classify those things, is but like as somebody who has seen like this is what the essay is about, right? Is like all of the suffering that those things have caused in my life
Mhm.
tends to lead me to see them very negative, like to see the underlying causes very negatively, and I don't think that's healthy.
Yeah.
Like that is one of the recurring phrases of AOA, is like anytime you're at war with yourself you're gonna lose. So
Mhm.
I am fully bought into that, and like I it's just it's but it is one of those things that like coming out the other side and being in more of a place of deep okayness than I've ever been,
Yeah.
it does feel like there's been like a little bit of cancer that's been excised from me.
Mhm.
Like it feels, and like I don't know, well, we might talk about this in regards to money at a certain point, but like I've always had a sort of an abusive relationship, or maybe not abusive, but yeah, I haven't had a good relationship with money through my life. And I've got a lot of dark patterns around it that have sort of like kept me perpetually stuck in a place of scarcity.
Mhm.
And I'm noticing right now, now that I'm in this place of deep okayness, that even though like my financial situation isn't fantastic right now, like I'm not panicking, I'm not
Mhm.
running back into old patterns, I'm not looking for like shitty short-term things that I can do in my business to squeeze as much revenue out of it as possible in the immediate future. Like I'm like I there's still a sense of equanimity maybe, and I feel like I can keep playing my games, like my long games, my infinite games, keep connecting people, keep following the aliveness, and not slip back into the pattern, as it were.
Yeah.
So it really, and like that's a wild thing for me that never would have been possible in pre Depot Canis times.
Pre Depot Canis times, the pre.
Yeah, the dark ages. Like
I'm trying to like force that into a prehistoric make prehistoric sound like pre-Canis, nah, whatever. Yeah, I'm realizing as you say that, like, this conversation is like an opportunity to hear more about, in general, through the lens of this article, like how you've experienced yourself to change through AOA, which is cool because I mean, like, I think this is the first time we've talked since it's finished. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, the cancer thing is interesting. One thing that I thought while you were talking about that was like, because some people have cancer and it doesn't actually fuck them up, and then they just like realize that they had cancer and then they die. Like they find out too late, I mean, obviously there's so many kinds of cancer, but like so much of or in certain cases, like maybe the vast majority of the suffering that comes from cancer is the reaction to having it and the prospect of what it means for you, and then like the attempts to cure it.
Yeah.
Like the fear of death, all the shit that comes with being like, whatever, like, oh, I have cancer. How is this possible? Why me? I'm ashamed, embarrassed, all of this stuff. And then like, then yeah, if you then go and you're like getting chemo, like obviously, right? So like hardcore efforts to cure it, that's where so much of the suffering comes from, not necessarily just the cancer.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something interesting there around, but I also, I don't know, there's something interesting around like cancer being kind of a poetic choice, but the meta, like, and like, so I think that's the thing, right? Is like, it makes sense as like the metaphor for like what this thing is, but as the metaphor for how we treat it, like, is like the complete fucking wrong thing. Because ultimately, like, I think if we end up viewing this as a cancer within ourselves, and then we end up going to war with that cancer and like throwing the kitchen sink at like, how do we do, like, it feels, that feels like the total wrong thing that I would want anyone to take away from the piece, right? Is like,
yeah.
So like finding a way to keep it as like a poetic metaphor for this impersonal force, while somehow getting people to fucking love themselves more, like, I mean, seems to be the line somewhere. Because like, you're right, it's like there is a way that if the cancer becomes personalized and you see it as part of yourself and you go to war with yourself, that it leads to far more suffering than even just like if you just like play into the pattern and live kind of a dead creative life. Like that's one thing, but if you're at war with yourself while doing that, which I have been at various times over the past couple of years, like it just doubles up the suffering, right?
Yeah. I mean, let me say this for everyone who hasn't watched my my reading of it. Like, I've been on the same journey and like felt almost everything that you described in the manifesto. So like, that's why we even got to know each other, is like because we've shared that in such similar ways. So it's not like I'm coming from the outside, like, don't know how this is, and like, get over it, bro. It's not that big deal. It's like, no, yeah, it's very intense. Yeah, this is not necessarily the path to go down for the conversation, but that distinction between the metaphor as rhetoric device in the manifesto, and then metaphor as like genuinely the the metaphor that you think is most accurate for seeing this for yourself.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting thing.
Yeah. When
Um,
it there's like more and more I'm in awe of how powerful metaphors are,
yeah,
and how I don't know. There's a book called Metaphors That We Live By that I've read like a third of, like two separate times, and I just can't seem to make my way through it. But like the essential idea is like metaphors are baked into our psyche in many ways, and they dictate the way like we interact with ourselves or relate to ourselves and relate to others. They like how we relate to anything basically.
yeah,
And so many of the metaphors that sort of seem to govern our world are violent metaphors. That so I don't know, like there is something here about like realizing it's not just a poetic device many times, or like it can be a poetic device, but realizing that it has this additional power to like interact with somebody's mind and help them see a problem in a certain way that might be internalized, that it then might be like deeply harmful. Like that's a really, I don't know, that's a lot of power to wield as a person who's trying to communicate ideas.
yeah,
And it leads to just like a deep sense that you need to be really fucking responsible with these things, and are like where there is a line between like, yes,
mm,
this is like the perfect poetic metaphor for
yeah,
seeing this as an impersonal phenomenon, but
yeah,
as a way of like how we combat it, like it is not the metaphor to use,
yeah,
and in fact it will be harmful. And like that is something that I will probably want to articulate at some point,
yeah,
because I don't know, I'm thinking about ways to like update the manifesto, or to add little like notes, or to add little things on other pieces of my site to like explain different pieces of it. Because
yeah,
again, like that was my biggest takeaway from your videos where you read it, is like there are places where I probably would not write it the same way right now,
yeah,
and where I think there are important distinctions like that that need to be made.
yeah. What's the distinction that you're making between, like, when you say poetic metaphor versus like the power that metaphor has to shape how a person literally sees this phenomenon and understand it in their own life? Like, are they not the same?
Hmm. Yeah,
Like,
it's interesting. It's like,
why would you use a metaphor if not because of that power?
well, I mean, for one, it's purely like an explanatory and communication tool, like taking a concept that somebody already knows and relating this, especially with something like quote unquote the pattern that is
Yeah,
just generic as fuck, and um could mean literally anything. Like there's like, it's purely like a creative and a craft choice of like, how do I explain what this is, how
yeah,
do I convey what kind of effects this has on the internet, on people's psyches, on the aliveness or lack thereof of creative work.
yeah,
So there is something there just in terms of like a pure creative tool, relating this set of ideas I have to something that people already know about.
right.
um but yeah, I don't know where the line is, like where does that then not jump into people's models of the world and their, and like and that's the thing, right, is like I think it would probably be useful for people to see the impersonal version of the pattern out in the world as a cancer, as something to be avoided.
Mm,
um but again, like where that line is between personal and impersonal, because again, like I don't think people who make generic best practicey empty creative work are bad people.
mm,
Like I that's the thing, is like I don't know where the line is between this impersonal force is a cancer and the people making it are a cancer, and that's a line I'm very uncomfortable with. Because I fundamentally, like my philosophy is of life is like fucking everybody is hurting, everybody deserves love. Most of the people who are doing bad things or have like really shitty strategies for having their needs met. Like, and it's like I don't believe in the idea of good people and bad people,
yeah,
generally speaking. um
Yeah.
So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It's really messy philosophical territory, and that's why I'm talking about like trying to articulate.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, trying to articulate these things as clearly as I can, because
Yeah.
it comes back to like how I think about the culture war is like I can hate the culture war as an impersonal phenomenon, but the only thing that can end the culture war is us fucking loving each other,
Mm.
even if somebody is on the quote unquote other side of the aisle, even if somebody despises us. Like love is the only thing
Mm.
that can break those dynamics.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. Um, yeah, that was a thing that tripped me up a lot in the manifesto was this, on the one hand, being it's a cancer, like we gotta fight it, like join me in the fight. And then towards the end being like, well, first and foremost, the pattern starts within. And so it's about healing our own wounds. And I was like, okay, so and then like becoming deeply okay. So it's like, so then what happens, what are we fighting if the thing that we need to do is like become deeply okay and heal our own wounds?
Hmm.
Like, does the metaphor break down there, or is it like, I mean,
Hmm.
you don't have to have an answer. It's
Yeah.
just what's
Well,
coming.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say like the metaphor doesn't belong anything like anywhere in the fourth section where we talk about like what we do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, like that's one of those lines that needs to be drawn, and it's definitely like, and that's the thing, right? Is like I still think there's, like I said before, is like having an awareness around what the pattern is and like being able to spot it,
Yeah.
and also being able to spot those tendencies in yourself to be drawn towards easy answers, towards
Yeah.
certain results. Like I think those are broadly useful, but yeah, I don't think the metaphor extends to how we start combating this phenomena.
Yeah. Well, so let's see if there's this difference between when you wrote this and now having gone through AOA and your conception of like how to achieve deep okayness. Did you feel before that it was something that you have to fight for, and now you
Deep
don't?
deep okayness.
Like you have to fight in order to get to that, like the internal forces that keep us from feeling deeply okay. Like, did you have to fight your way there before?
Hmm. Maybe a little bit. I think, like broadly speaking, is like the like AOA is, it's almost entirely an emotional work program. Um,
Yeah.
it's wild. I don't know. I think about like Ungated as like a Trojan horse, um, for a lot of like this type of work. But
Yeah.
like Joe Hudson in AOA is like the ultimate at this. He's like, I'll help you accomplish more in life. This is for like high achieving business people who just want to accomplish things.
uh,
And then he just like throws you into like the most hardcore, somatic, intimate, vulnerable, just like face your fucking like, oh my God.
it's funny because we, having gone through the connection course, it was like, no, that's clearly what this is.
Yeah.
So I just like put that onto AOA, and I haven't read like the full on sales copy for AOA, so I don't have this idea that it's like a productivity thing besides the
Well, I
besides
mean, it's not like you get kind of like a taste of it, but even in like the brand art of accomplishment
yeah, I
in
mean,
like
for sure.
um yeah, it's like, yeah, and the way they position it towards like, like CEOs and like entrepreneurs and like very like high achieving type A people,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
um
yeah.
but to go back to your question, that's a what?
You were going back. I was gonna go back to.
Oh, I think, yeah, I think there used to be a conception that deep okayness was very hard,
Mm-hmm.
so it was something you kind of had to fight for.
Mm-hmm.
I also kind of thought it was additive, like reading Sasha's article is like, fuck, now I gotta like meditate a lot, I gotta do shadow work, I gotta probably do some psychedelics,
Mm.
fucking, which I did a bunch of psychedelics over the last 8 weeks too. That's a fun thing. um but there was a sense that like I had to go on a journey and like add a bunch of shit to my life,
Mm.
and struggle to learn like these new things, knowing that they would be hard and like just like uncomfortable and weird and awkward in the beginning, as learning all new things tends to be.
Yeah.
um and I think the thing that I picked up from AOA is that it's subtractive, right? Is like it's unlearning emotional patterns more than anything else.
Mm.
And like I don't know, there are some like new techniques and whatever that I picked up there, but so much of it is just like it's purely experiential. Because like the connection course, right? There's really no material other than the public podcast that they give you. It's just like, go listen to this podcast, and now here are some exercises that you're going to do with a partner. And with AOA, there's also a group
Right.
that um that force you to actually like feel into and embody new ways of relating to yourself and relating to others, and seeing what it's like when you let your various defense mechanisms down,
Mm.
and the fact that the world doesn't end like many of us think it will, like that we think we won't be respected, or that the person on the other end will be really put off by our vulnerability or our insecurities or our neediness or whatever the fuck. And when we can actually let down those defenses, and the other person is actually more loving towards us and more admiring towards us, it just completely fucking rewires your perception of everything, right? Like
Yeah.
you learn that it's okay to be in this state that is more unguarded, and that it can actually get you closer to people and help you connect more with people and build deeper relationships and be admired more.
Yeah.
And then obviously like I don't know, it like unwiring the patterns that lead us to be like really neurotic with like, I need the right productivity app, and then you just realize that you can like, yeah, I don't know exactly like, but mostly AOA felt like unlearning and stripping away old defense mechanisms and becoming more raw, pure, authentic. I don't know exactly like what the right word is, but
Yeah.
it's just like stripping away the various defense strategies that I've picked up over the years that may have served me in one part of life, but yeah.
Huh. That it's almost like the AOA and connection courses are like, yeah, Trojan horsing that feeling of intense information seeking that we have, which like leads us into the whole course buying thing, shiny object syndrome with courses. Like, and I mean, you and I both have spent like many thousands of dollars on courses, like so much.
So much.
Like we've been seeing in the last couple of months, even people being like, I need a course to finish all the courses that I've bought but didn't finish. Like,
Yeah.
right. But so there's this impulse, this like very, very, very strong impulse to take in more and more information as a way to like solve the things. Right.
Yeah.
Even reading books is like that, right? Like just book buying sprees. And like I've been reading books a lot this month about focusing, right? And like some of them are like, okay, so you read this, like take a moment and like notice what's going on in you. And there's like still this like, oh, but I want to keep reading. And it's like, but oh wait, actually the like legitimate change and like value that I want from this book comes from like the taking a moment part. And it's like, it sounds like AOA just like did that too. It's like, yeah, here's like the information, but really the whole course is just taking a giant fucking moment.
Yeah.
Don't consume
Take,
anymore.
yeah. No, that's exactly it, man. And like, yeah, it's funny just how learning to do that, like this is like probably outside the scope of that conversation, but like there are so many areas of my life that I've been dissatisfied with over the last 5, 10 years, whatever. Like food has been such a big one for me, obviously. Like food and finances and relationships and various things around work and productivity and whatever,
Yeah.
that I've tried so relentlessly to attack them directly. Like with food, it's like, yo, I got to learn all the perfect nutrition strategies, and then I got to build the perfect plan for myself, and then I have to rigidly enforce such plan on
Yep.
myself and make sure I keep myself accountable.
Right.
And like I focused on literally none of these areas of my life during AOA,
Uh-huh.
but then literally all of them improved without my trying. And it was like really fucking annoying, but cool, but annoying. like, but like watching how like it all of a sudden just became really easy to stop in the middle of a meal
Mm,
because all of a sudden I was in tune with like my actual hunger
mm,
senses without me trying. Like it was like I wasn't like eating slowly on purpose. I wasn't like there was no tactical anything that was going into it.
yeah.
There was just an awareness that was all of a sudden there, and it was like, oh, all right then.
Yeah. Wow.
And like the extra wild one is like I've had a um just like this anxious habit at picking at my beard for years.
Yeah.
Where especially like if I would have like an especially anxiety inducing day, like I would just start relentlessly picking at it and like actually pulling out little bits of hair. Like there's an actual name for this somewhere in the psychological literature. I forget what it's
I've heard
called.
of hair picking. Yeah.
Um, but it literally fucking stopped in week one
Mm,
out of nowhere.
mm.
Um, and it has not come back since over the last like 9 weeks or whatever since this thing
Wow.
has been done. Um, so I
Interesting.
don't like that's the thing, right? Is like I don't know how to explain any of it other than like I'm more and more convinced that a lot of this stuff was driven by underlying emotional patterns
Mm,
and basically me trying to avoid feeling certain things.
yeah.
You know, trying to like I'm realizing how much of like my patterns around food were driven by a feeling of loneliness that then I would want to like run away from instead of just like feeling through it.
Yeah.
And like eating and watching TV was
Yeah.
like the thing that sort of like numbed me to that.
Yeah.
Um,
And
so I don't know.
let me say
Yeah.
that that's something I also have shared with you. Like, certainly, I mean, there was like a almost decade period where that was the thing, where like I was also intermittent fasting, so I was like eating only once a day, plus having these like loneliness and stress induced like food was like my drug. So just like almost like horrifically binging, you
Yeah.
know. So I yeah, like I know what that can be like, and the difference. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, no one's gonna be able to see this, but like, so all my life, I bit my nails a lot,
Yeah.
like down to the, painful, like sometimes bleeding. And when I started, when I came across like intuitive eating right at the end of 2018 and like started doing that, and like let go of like all the intensity around eating finally,
Yeah.
I mean, pretty much I stopped biting my nails like almost immediately at the time. And like now I'm just really fucking lazy about clipping my nails, but like look at how long they
Yeah.
are.
They're
As
very pretty.
like it's not even,
Yeah.
it's just like it wasn't a decision. And then like this kind of thing, or picking your beard or whatever, like that's the sort of thing that there's like fucking articles and articles and articles and like probably fucking books about like strategies for like how to stop biting your nails. Like put
Yeah.
hot sauce on them, or like put nail polish on, or like all this shit, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, I just stopped though. Like
Yeah.
not even realizing it. It took me like a couple of weeks probably to even realize that I had stopped.
That's and it that for me like And I don't know if this is a fair characterization, but
Mhm.
it's making me it's making me like deeply skeptical because like again, like I spent 10 to 15 years directly attacking my food problems, creating these really vicious patterns of rigidity where I would swing from one extreme to another,
Yeah.
causing untold amounts of suffering and me being deeply at war with myself,
Yeah.
which then, further perpetuated the pattern of like needing more information and so on and so forth. And like,
Yeah.
I feel like I've heard similar things from enough people about how it wasn't like, I don't know. I talked to my mom
Mhm.
about the eating stuff, and like she's still very much just like a white knuckle it because that's what she did back in the day. And I like it, there's no way that I can seemingly communicate that like white knuckling has not been working for me, and I need to find other ways to approach this problem, because if I stay stuck in the same pattern or the same cycle, like it's
Yeah.
just going to lead to a really shitty life. But
Right.
like I more and more like I think I'm pretty bought into this indirect way of
Mhm.
solving problems, having experienced it so viscerally. And
Mhm.
it makes me really, really sad around, yeah, I guess just around like how much suffering is still being caused by by I don't know. I think it's just like rigidity in general is like this sort of like all or nothing. Like I have to attack this directly. I have to fix this now because I am broken. And like I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with this other than to say like it like I'm more and more aware of like how much the personal development space,
Mhm.
however well intentioned, and the productivity space and the how to build a business space and the like whatever, man, like
Yeah.
it's all sort of playing into the same patterns. And yeah, however well intentioned a lot of it is, it's only exacerbating like the underlying emotional patterns
Mhm.
that we kind of need to figure out if we want to flourish, if we want to feel good, if we want to. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know where I'm going with this. I haven't really thought it through yet, but there's like a pretty big fundamental like worldview shift here
Yeah.
around how I used to view like the consumption of information and the solving of problems.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I think I need some time to sit with it and think through it. But looking
Yeah.
at around at all these different spaces, um, yeah, I'm kind of overwhelmed by sadness.
Hmm. Interesting. Were you sad about it before?
Hmm, probably. I think I've been pretty cynical about it for years, because like I've that's the thing is like I've had awareness around the pattern for years. I
Mhm.
guess this is a different pattern around like my patterns
Mhm.
of swinging from one extreme to another, from like I don't know, specifically with food. It's like all of the underlying patterns I've been aware of for a long time.
Yeah.
Um, but a lot of it was just me being kind of resigned to it. And so like there was like I was aware enough of like how everything out there wasn't working for me, which made me cynical about it and kind of sad about it. And
Yeah.
seeing that it wasn't really working for other people as well led to some of the same sadness.
Yeah.
But I don't think it was really until this year and like that retreat in Vermont I did that really got me started down emotional work, is broadly speaking what I would classify all of this as. That things began to actually shift in any kind of meaningful way. And AOA was just like throwing tons of fuel on a little fire that had been started earlier.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think I was already sad and cynical, but now it's like knowing that there is actually another side,
Yeah.
and that we're not just trapped in this like fatalistic cycle of constantly needing more information to fix ourselves, and then it never really works. Like
Mhm.
now that I know that there's actually some deeper transformation possible that has nothing to do with anything of what's out there, like
Yeah.
there's more actual sadness of like, oh man.
Hmm. I mean, the manifesto itself, I would say, like, explicitly up front, if I weren't like reading behind between the lines or like understanding emotion in any way, the emotion that's there is not sadness, but it's definitely
It's
like
anger.
anger, right? So yeah, that's particularly why it stood out when you said it makes you sad now,
Yeah.
because certainly that's
It's
not what you were expressing before.
I don't think I would have even recognized how angry the manifesto was prior to AOA.
Mm.
This is one of my many reckonings and insights, is realizing how much anger I've suppressed,
Mm.
and noticing like, yeah, that was what stood out watching your videos of it, particularly certain sections of it, like, and rereading it and being like, holy shit, that is really angry, and
Mm.
like obviously so.
Yeah.
And I don't think I had much awareness of it when I was writing it,
Mm.
because I had a story that I wasn't an angry person.
Um, and
Uh-oh, you froze on me.
I still froze.
Yeah. Yeah, your face is frozen in like a really silly.
I'll just turn my camera off for the moment. You can hear me.
Yeah, I can still hear you.
Uh,
How about now?
I can
Can you hear
hear
me?
you. Yep.
All right. Sweet.
Um,
I'll just keep mine off.
uh, it's so much better seeing each
Yeah.
other. Yeah, one as I was rereading it just before the call, one word that was like coming out, and I almost wanted to put it in a word cloud and like see how big this particular word was mediocrity.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and I remember after I graduated college, the first time that I sat down to do like a really long free writing session, which was about like what is it that I want to do now, since I basically studied philosophy and didn't have a path given to me by my degree. It's like, okay, well, what the fuck now? Like, I think that like literally the last sentence of this like 1,000+ word free writing session was, I will not be mediocre. It was just like the worst possible thing that could ever happen was to be mediocre. And it was like, I'm going to strive with all of my being
Hmm.
to not ever be that, was how I
Yeah.
was coming to post college years, um,
Hmm.
which is very intense.
Yeah.
Um, so it was interesting to see that in the
Yeah. I think
there were multiple paragraphs that like literally end with the word mediocrity.
yeah. I think in retrospect, like, so there is something about the concept of mediocrity that I think is probably worth digging into. But I'm uncomfortable with it now, fundamentally because it's laced with judgment. It's laced with value judgments about what is good, what is not, and a lot of that is subjective. And I think I told you this already, is like the distinction that I didn't make in the manifesto, but I really wish I would, is aliveness and deadness.
Mm.
Um, because there's a lot of work out there that is technically very, very competent. It is well crafted, where all of like it looks exactly as it should,
Yeah.
but there is a lack of aliveness behind it.
Mm.
Um, and I like this, and this is one of those things, like, it's so metaphysical that it's hard to say, like, what appears alive to me might not to somebody else.
Right.
That it's like none of this is objective in any meaningful way. But like this is so, and again, like a lot of this is coming from my experience, and like the people I've coached, is like when I was writing for No Film School, which is the filmmaking blog I talk about there, is like there were days of aliveness in the early days where I was really excited by what I was doing. It felt new and fresh, and I was exploring new frontiers.
Yeah.
And very, very quickly, the what I can only classify as deadness set in as I started doing the exact same thing over and over and over. And then any attempt I made at breaking out of that and getting back into aliveness, although I wouldn't have characterized it as that at the time, but in retrospect, it's really clear.
Yeah.
But any attempt I would make would end up leaving me, I don't know, flummoxed, frustrated.
Yeah.
Like I think I mentioned it in the piece. Is like I went out of my way to like do something like really, really good and long form and meaty
Right.
that I was excited about. And
Right.
because we were incentivized by page views, and because nobody wants to read like a 7,500 word like interview, no matter how thoughtful or good it is or whatever.
Yeah.
Like it was one of those things that just tanked. Which then just like pushed me back into this feeling of deadness. Um, and ultimately that is the thing that I've been running from, because like it showed up again in when I started my own business, right? Is like it was very, very alive at first, and I had the intention to keep it alive.
Yeah.
But as I felt the sort of like financial pressure and financial scarcity, I was pushed into sort of like marketing best practices and like a lot of the rigid ways of thinking that dominate the marketing world, which sucked the aliveness out of everything I was doing. And like even though eventually it did work and I had a business that was okay-ish, I guess, like it felt totally fucking dead to me. And like yeah, like the other metaphor I always use is like building something that feels like a prison.
Yeah.
Um, and that's what filmmaker freedom felt like to me
Yeah.
in like the final year before the pandemic and the lockdowns.
Yeah.
Is like I was trapped in it and I had to keep doing it,
Yeah.
even though it all felt so empty. So I think there's something there around what I mean by mediocrity is by and large like deadness. Um, work that work that comes from a place of being resigned, work
Mm.
that comes from sort of a cynical take of like, this is just how things are, this is how things are done, this is how I have to do things if I want to succeed, this is the formula I have to follow,
Yeah.
even though it's not truly who I am or how I want to be or what I want to say.
Yeah.
There's a sense of deadness there. um and like I don't know, man, like I think that's the thing that I didn't articulate at all in the manifesto.
That
um
aliveness.
and and it feels it feels like the distinction that's like
Mm.
my life at this point, like what the word ungated to me sort of refers to is
Yeah.
stripping away all of the stories, all of the expectations, all of the emotional bullshit that keeps us from our aliveness.
Mm.
I think aliveness is our birthright. I think creativity is our birthright.
Mm.
And yeah, I don't know, man, like I think it just comes down to that, is like seeing how much deadness pervades the internet. Like there is anger, there is sadness, there is um
Yeah.
yeah, and there is a yeah, that's where the desire to fight comes in, right?
Yeah.
Like there's so much fucking potential in every single one of
Right.
us. There's so much potential in us collectively. But
Right.
yeah, if deadness is the status quo, then I don't know, man. I don't know exactly like how to not be angry at that or
Yeah.
about that, I guess.
Yeah.
Like,
And all these different things that are a manifestation of the pattern where like no one's gonna be able to see this, but like closing in on you, right?
yeah,
I mean, that's how it was for me. Like, and you kind of just described it that way of like, this is the formula. Like, even if it's not how I want to be, like, it's just what I got to do. So it's like, or a trapped prison, right? Like, that's what anger is about. It's like, fuck you, like, go away, get off me.
yeah,
Uh, so it makes total fucking sense that like you
yeah.
be angry.
What?
That's not mysterious. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'll tell you one of the interesting distinctions about anger that I picked up in AOA is that beneath it, there's always love. We're
Yeah.
angry because we care,
Yeah.
because we,
Yeah.
because we love the person, because we see the beauty that could exist,
Yeah.
the whatever it is, like.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. It's something that I'm sort of grappling with. Is like I think I'm realizing that my anger is not something to be pushed away. Like because beneath the surface of it, there are some very beautiful, valuable things.
Yeah.
And by suppressing the anger, I also suppress the love. Like
Yeah.
it's one of those things. So
I mean, if you didn't write the manifesto angrily, then we wouldn't be having this conversation.
yeah,
That was
it was.
huh.
I was gonna say I think I wrote the manifesto from a place of suppressed anger,
Sure.
instead of expressed.
Well, yeah,
And
because you like
yeah,
you didn't even realize till later
yeah,
how angry it was in
yeah,
retrospect, right? Like,
yeah,
which is one of those classic things about like when you disallow yourself to be a certain way, it doesn't go away. It just comes out in ways that are not within your awareness or control. um, but I was one thing that was interesting when I was rereading it was you're like, talking about fighting it and like winning and how it's like uh this thing. I mean, it's like killing creativity or whatever, the pattern. And at the same time, there's this way in which it's like kind of your muse.
mm, the pattern.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that tracks. like well, yeah, yeah, no, I mean it's one of those things. Is like this as a marketer is like positioning yourself against something
Yeah.
is extraordinarily powerful, and having this as a frame of reference now
Yeah.
is well, for one, it's been like the amount of like good things that have come from this manifesto so far, despite its many emotional imperfections,
Yeah.
are astounding. Like the amount of really heartfelt messages I got. I've got some like freelance work that came out of nowhere just because
Mm.
some startup founder read it and loved it. Like so I oh, where was I even going with that? It's like there is something like extraordinarily effective that it's serving the intended purpose, which is to, for all intents and purposes, to market Ungated and myself and my worldview,
Yeah.
and all of these things around being like this rhetorical rallying cry, and to get people to see the water they swim in a little bit better,
Yeah.
and to get people to actually start paying attention to the internal game and realize that it's not all about whatever marketing tactics you're using. Like so I like yeah, like the pattern is my muse, and calling it out and giving name to it and positioning myself as the guy who battles against it
Yeah.
was the intention,
Yeah.
and is the thing that is largely driving a lot of positive downstream benefits for me in my life,
Right. Yeah.
even though there is an uneasiness in like the battle or the war metaphor, right? Of like, because I'm not going to war with myself to break the pattern. Like that's not how one breaks the pattern.
Right.
um but as sort of like a it feels gross to say. I was going to say as like a public what's the word, not presentation, as a public display of my values, or a public display of yeah, oh, it's a performance, right?
Mm.
Like that's the word that makes me uncomfortable, but like as a public performance that's meant to communicate a certain set of things, like
Yeah.
it feels to me like it did its job. um I feel like I lost the thread of that question, but yeah, it's totally my muse, and I like positioning myself against it, and it feels good.
Yeah. Nice. Good. Yeah. In a way that was like kind of like a gotcha question, but at the same time, I was just curious. Like, yeah, it's like
Yeah,
this
you
stuff.
got me.
This, I mean, in a way, at the same time, right? It's like, yeah, like all your stuff that you're doing is thanks to the pattern in a certain way, and like
Yes.
think to, I mean,
Oh,
likewise for me, right? Like all the journey that I've been on, like I went through, fought, whatever, like experienced marketing world in this way as well. Like everything that I think about now and value is like function of that, right? So it's just like wild to be like, oh well, I guess kind of thank you. Like,
oh, dude.
or not even kind of
I,
like deeply.
yeah, yeah. I'm still having a hard time making that shift. Um,
Yeah.
and I wrote about this like before I even wrote the manifesto, is like this tendency that I have to be really antagonistic towards my past self.
Right.
And I still kind of am. Like I still have that heaviness that I feel like I wasted my 20s in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's starting to fade with deep okayness and such.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there is a level of I don't know if condescension is the right word.
Mm.
There is a level of that antagonism in present Rob writing about past Rob's behavior as it relates to the pattern.
Yeah.
That like there's something there that I would probably change or soften
Yeah.
were I to write it again right
Tough.
now.
That's a tough thing. I mean, like I'm not out of being like kind of like condescending to my own past. It kind of
Mm-hmm.
depends how far and like where and which part you're looking and like of your history. But
Yeah.
there was, what was there specifically, something else I was going to bring up? Oh, like the manifesto being what it is, being that sort of almost like unconsciously angry thing. Maybe you would rewrite it now, but like the fact is, so like I had my reaction to it, but that's also because like I'd gone through that feelings about that world and then kind of like went past it already. So
Yeah.
to me, it was like, you're still like where I was in a way. That sounds so
Yeah.
easy to say that, but like
Yeah. I think it's true though. Like I think you're probably beyond the way. Yeah.
there were times when I would have like, or I was like reading ideas like that, and it was like, fuck yes, thank you, right?
Yeah.
And so like two things, it's like you needed to express that
Mm-hmm.
to move on, to move forward. And then two, like anyone who's feeling that needs to read that to get where they need to go. Like, and if
Yeah.
you like wrote it in the way that you, however you would write it, like post AOA, it wouldn't speak to the people that it speaks to now,
Mm.
right?
I had never thought about that. That's pretty fucking profound.
Hmm.
Because I think one of the things I'm always thinking about, and like I think I've told you, is like Ungated is a Trojan horse. Ostensibly on the outside, it's all about marketing and creator shit and like indie business and whatever.
Yeah.
But I always am sort of like waffling on like what it's a Trojan horse for. Like at various, I've said regenerative philosophy, I've said deep okayness,
Yeah.
but like one of the other like intellectual threads I've been pulling on lately is developmental psychology,
Yeah.
like stage theory, basically. And I'm still super new to it, but like there is a sense that like what I'm trying to do, and it sounds like the path that you're on is essentially moving up development, like moving up the developmental ladder
Hmm.
towards I don't know, like from like childhood to mature adulthood, where you're able to navigate the world, your own emotions, your own relationships, all of this from like a really mature, grounded place.
Hmm.
Breaking a lot of like the emotional patterns that kept you like trapped in various stages or various places in your life. And like that feels, I don't know, that feels like it tracks onto what you're saying, is like there's like authentically expressing this and getting it out of my system, like even if I look back at it 3 months later and I'm like, ugh, like is a necessary step for moving, yeah, moving up the ladder, so to speak, or becoming like the next or stepping into the next evolution of self, which, you know, is always a never ending process. It's not.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's something there around realizing just like the evolutionary nature of all of this that's really comforting.
Yeah.
Like none of us are fixed in any capacity.
Right. Yeah, because like someone could read the manifesto now and totally vibe with it, and then probably they would want to hear more from you, and
Mm-hmm.
you've grown since writing it, so now you can be like, well, here's the next metaphor that actually like makes more sense, but I have your attention now, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, writing it allowed you to get through to the other side of seeing that whole issue, and then it speaks to the people who are at where you were at,
Mm-hmm.
and then allows you to speak to them again, and then like share a new perspective. Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember, there was like it was like a month and a half ago. We were talking about writing, and um, about this kind of like trap that I think a lot of people fall into, like the things that they write need to like stand the test of time. It's like if I write it, like I have to be able to like stand by it like a year from now or whatever, which is like, to me, yeah, such a trap. And to me it's more like, uh no, like write it so that you can move forward.
Yeah.
If you still
Did
agree
you?
with a year, like maybe that's kind of
Yeah.
bad. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Did you? I don't know. Sam tweeted. Sam Sager. Something similar to this. It's been this. I have it taped as a sticky note on my computer. It just says "not my writing, the writing,"
mm,
and it's this broader. It's this broader idea that what I really want and need at this stage in my creative journey is to
mm,
depersonalize the shit out of all of this.
mm,
Um, and essentially see myself as a conduit for the ideas that are coming into my world
mm,
and that are meaningful to me, and to put them out. And like, because that's the thing, is like so much of our creative work gets attached to our identity and our sense of self-worth, and the more that happens, the more pressure we put on it, and the more like,
yeah,
and and like I think this might be like Rob specific, because I think I've expressed maybe like 2% of all of the crazy shit that's swirling around in my head.
mm,
And most of it is just because I'm constantly like perfectionisming myself to death in some way or another. I'm constantly worried about like not, yeah, like it not being good enough in some way that will damage my sense of self.
mm,
Um and yeah, my sense of self-worth. And so like this is really the creative practice I'm sitting with right now, is just being a conduit for these ideas that are not fundamentally my own. And yes, I'm still going to apply my craft to them. I'm still going to try to express them as coolly or beautifully or radly. It's not a word,
mm,
but like, I want to put great shit out into the world, but like depersonalizing it like that and realizing that I'm just a conduit for something larger than myself, like feels like it takes so much of the pressure off.
mm,
And it, yeah, it allows me to evolve in a lot of these ways, right? Like I don't feel like I have to attach myself to the work I put out in my world. It allows me to be a more fluid being and to constantly explore and grow and evolve as a person without feeling like I'm like magnetically attached, or like there's some gravitational pull to my past body of work that's forcing me to stay there.
yeah,
Um, and
yeah,
so yeah, this is a new thing I'm exploring that feels really in tune with that. Is like it feels like it potentially speeds up that cycle of me evolving and hopefully bringing people along with me. Who
mm,
knows?
yeah. I was thinking, like, as a concrete example of what you're talking about, like in early years, like as a copywriter, especially, like the absolute horrific pain of getting feedback on writing, which is not even like this is generally true for writing.
Uh-oh, you froze again. Yeah, you are totally frozen. I don't know if anybody can hear me or anything, but there you go.
And
Oh,
camera off.
there we go.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I hear you now.
yeah, like early years as a copywriter, how freaking painful it was to get feedback was because like the way I was approaching writing and work in general was that like every fucking word that I wrote was like putting myself on a platter to be judged. Like it was like a representation of like my worth and my like intelligence. And so it's like, okay, like here's everything I have, and like I really need you to approve of me because of all this other background that I was bringing to the work, right? And then it's like, oh, if they say like, oh, this idea is not good, then it's like, oh my god, like my whole thinking's bad. Because I was so deeply personally invested in it that any red marks were like red marks on me. um and yeah, fuck, that was rough.
Yeah,
Put it lightly.
that's funny. I still don't much like getting feedback. And this is an interesting thing. I can't tell how much of this is me bullshitting myself and how much of this is like useful. But like, so like, I don't know if you've been in foster or not, but like the entire conception of foster is like writers giving each other feedback on their work.
Yeah.
And like, I like when I initially signed up for it like a year and a half ago, actually, damn, it's probably almost 2 years at this point. Um, like I spent, I don't know, I like earnestly gave it a shot and put some of the early Ungated work and the early Citizen Within work through it.
Yeah.
And like I just did not like the process. And I like part of it is the like when you're crowdsourcing work from people you don't know, a lot of it tends to be noise and less of it tends to be signal, which then creates extra mental work on your part, which is a whole other conversation. But like I feel like especially now that I'm in this sort of like conduit phase and I want to be more prolific and let more things just go out into the world and be however imperfect, like I just don't like it. Like feedback doesn't necessarily seem all that useful. At least like for certain types of things, like smaller posts. Like if I'm doing a big essay, I'll probably use Foster. But
Right.
like I'm wondering how much of this is just like me rationalizing my distaste for getting feedback
Yeah.
versus like how much, and it's probably both.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know what that has to do with
Is
anything,
there
but
like even when like at the very beginning of the conversation you were like talking about trying to lump different aspects of the creative process together, right? One being putting the thoughts into writing in a way that is compelling for people and will get through to people, and then two, just like clarifying what those thoughts are for yourself and like expressing them and putting them out on a page. And like
yeah,
the feedback part can be, I mean, and there's different kinds of feedback depending on which stage you're in, right? But like if you've already gotten all the ideas out there and you're just trying to refine it to be like, okay, how do I best get this clear so that another person will take it in, then like that's particular kind of feedback.
yeah,
And then like, but if you're like, I'm still developing this idea, feedback in a way doesn't even make sense of the word. Maybe it's more like,
yeah.
does this make sense? Like, or can you like ask me questions about what the fuck I mean or something like that?
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
also,
it's
like,
also,
really need that.
yeah. I'm also like, I think there's something where I assume that like feedback has to be, like pre-publication is like people giving me comments in a Google Doc or some shit. But like
Mm-hmm.
your videos
Mm-hmm.
reading through the manifesto were fucking incredible feedback
Mm-hmm.
that actually caused me to sort of like rethink, not necessarily rethink some things, but like see some of the underlying anger and some of like all of that.
Yeah.
Like, so, and like this conversation is feedback in many ways. Like it's about keeping a conversation going and creating new possibilities around like what's there, as opposed to, I don't know. Like I think there's maybe we need a better word than feedback,
Yeah.
but
I'm reminded too of like somebody I know. I feel like we both responded to somebody on this, or maybe multiple times, but about this idea, that whole concept of content, and like, is
yeah,
there a better word for content and stuff like that?
yeah,
And yeah, I mean, especially with making the videos and then having this call, having made the videos, it's like, I don't know, does content fit anywhere within the scope of like this whole thing? I don't know. But what it definitely seems to be is that we're just having like at this point like a many months worth of getting to know each other better, through the conversations that led up to the manifesto, that have happened as a result of the manifesto. Like,
yeah. I like all of this as like, and I don't know, you and I talked about this early on with like the idea of having a good reply game,
mm,
but I'm more and more enthralled with the idea of creativity and a lot of what we do on the internet as part of an ongoing conversation that's always evolving.
yeah,
Like that feels like a metaphor that's increasingly alive.
yeah,
Um, and I'm yeah, and then like that's what this is, right? Like
yeah,
like this is literally a conversation, but what it's actually doing is furthering like a set of ideas that was laid down in one place that was actually a continuation of something that came before, which was
yeah,
like so it's like there's something really profound to that, and like it speaks to that idea of finality that you were talking about before. It was like maybe like yeah, maybe a lot of our perfectionism and rigidity and whatever stems from like attaching our self-worth and like feeling like it has to have a sense of finality and whatever else. But
yeah,
I'm wondering just like, yeah, and we've talked about this at length. It's like what does creativity look like when it is intentionally framed as a conversation? Um, and like this is what your podcast is, right? Is like you're actually fucking having conversations with other podcasts,
yeah,
like, but like, but yeah, and I think like that metaphor can be extended so much further.
yeah,
Like, I don't know, man. And like it's funny, Sam and I have talked about writing writing public letters to each other to like continue the conversation around self-renewal,
yeah.
because like that's his jam. Um and increasingly my jam.
Right.
So yeah, yeah, I really like that concept.
Yeah. I like I like that you brought the aliveness back to it, because it's like, yeah, when I think about that whole content question, it's like, okay, well, what's the point of content? And there's not just one point, there's not just one purpose, but one purpose, certainly, I think, for many people who are not just like trying to like make some like automatic business that just makes them money and they can do whatever else they want. Like, you're trying to express, I mean, you wrote a manifesto, you called it a manifesto. Like, you don't write a manifesto about something you don't care about,
Mm.
right? So it's like you are trying to express what's alive for you. And presumably, I mean, you didn't ask me to make the videos and shit, right? But like, presumably, in expressing yourself, you also hope to then engage with other people around the shit that you're expressing as
Mhm.
what's alive for you. I mean, you talk about it in the manifesto, like find the others. right? Like finding the others and then what? Like to converse with them and like spend time with them and have relationships, right? And like,
Mhm.
so content or whatever that is, like its job in many ways is just to facilitate relating.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
so in that respect, like it doesn't need to be perfect. Also, it's made me wonder, like, if you've ever thought about the connections between all this and then like ultra speaking, right? Because ultra speaking is about
Yeah.
stop being such a fucking anal
Yeah.
perfectionist of talking. Like, just talk and like
Dude,
connect. You know?
I credit ultra speaking with being the thing that started me down the deep okayness path and
Yeah,
the path towards authenticity and being a fully expressed person and being less in my head and just being very present and not overthinking shit.
yeah.
Like, yeah, talk about fucking Trojan horses, man. Like I came in being like, I'm gonna learn how to do some public speaking, and came out being like, wow, I kind of trust myself now. What the fuck? Like,
Kind of how it was for
and
me in a way, because I initially, I mean, I didn't do it speaking, but like I went through, right, I had my whole improv and acting years. The like the first part of that was joining Toastmasters,
mm,
and it's like that, which is about public speaking. But then it was like, well, this is not quite it. Like, this is not what feels alive. What feels alive is being able to go up there and just like fucking talk about whatever, like without a plan. That feels
yeah,
really alive. So like, let's look for more opportunity to do that, and then improv and all that stuff. And so like, that's why, yeah, ultra speaking excites me as a thing that exists.
yeah,
And it's cool to hear that that's how that worked.
yeah. I want to go back to it now, honestly. Like
Yeah,
now that I know what I know and I've been where I've been, like
yeah,
I guess I'm intrigued by like what the next levels of ultra speaking look like and
yeah,
like how that experience could be deeper. Cause like that's the thing, is like AOA, like something tells me is like a lifetime journey through all of this stuff. And like every time it's going to be a little bit different. It's going to shape shift based on who you are and what you need.
yeah,
Um, I kind of have a suspicion that ultra speaking has a similar dynamic.
yeah.
Although I don't need to spend more money on courses right now. Holy fuck.
Right. But nonetheless, fascinating to imagine, like, yeah, to see it maybe as like, it's like, okay, you've done ultra speaking, you've done AOA, and now you're thinking about, you still want to write online, but like, what's the purpose? What is it that you're trying to do with writing online, and how can ultra speaking
Yeah.
help with that now? Where it's
Yeah.
like, oh, I just want to like start conversations, and like, it doesn't matter if if it doesn't matter if it's like perfect and all this stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know.
One
I want
interesting.
to do it. Now I want to do it.
Yeah. 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 We could do some ultra speaking games. That could be fun. But no, I'm one of I don't know. Just hearing like write online triggered me a little bit because well not because of
uh,
like ship 30 or like Dickie Bush reasons, but I'm increasingly letting go of my identity as a writer.
mm,
I think I'm a good writer. I want to get better at writing. It's one of my best ways of communicating.
yeah,
But like this, I think this is the thing that ultra speaking started opening up for me is an ability to communicate in a whole bunch of different ways. And
yeah,
like again, like I have the sticky note as like not my writing, the writing. It's not really about the writing. It's like not my ideas, the ideas.
yeah,
And realizing that fundamentally what I'm doing in the world is communicating across a bunch of different channels in different
yeah,
ways, in
yeah,
different styles. But really, like it's in service of this larger set of ideas that I think are beneficial to humanity. And like I sort of I like it sounds cringe to be on like the I'm gonna save the world beat, but
mm,
like I think we all do have power
Mm-hmm.
more power than we think to make meaningful change, especially when you have tools like the internet and the ability to communicate well.
Mm-hmm.
um like that can create just like untold ripples in people's minds, and you never know who exactly you're going to connect with and what they'll take away from the communications that you put out or the artifacts that you've left in the world. And
Yeah.
like it's just the kind of thing that I think is extraordinarily powerful. But yeah, it's interesting. I've just realized that I don't really think of myself as a writer anymore,
Mm-hmm.
even though I do a lot of it. Like it's not my identity. And
Right.
that's another one of those ways that I feel like I've kind of broken out of like an old rigid pattern, an old rigid way of conceptualizing myself and thinking that I had to be in the world.
Right. Yeah, I share that.
Yeah, well, I don't know, you're just like Mr. I'm going to record my voice. Like
I mean,
yeah.
it's a fucking crazy thing to be like, wow, if I rewound 10 years, let's say less than that, like 5 years, 5, 6 years, the idea that I might just record something with not a plan in place and go for like an hour and like get value from doing so and not be like scared and shit. It's like unthinkable.
Yeah. Fuck yeah.
And now it's like a daily thing that is so much fun. So yeah, it's wild. Anyway, but yeah, that because I think you write more than me, but like the besides Twitter, even like the last thing I really wrote, I think, was that reflection on the Kendrick Lamar song. But then that's only writing because the video got blocked.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, so literally, I haven't really written, but I've been saying it like many times. Like, I have been more prolific this year than like I've ever been.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Ungated.
Oh, baby.
I'm ungated.
It's funny. I don't know. You've known me long enough to know that I'm always threatening to be very, very prolific, and then I'm never quite there. Like it's interesting. Like I don't know. Like
Okay,
it feels like
it's gonna be prolific.
yeah, but like I don't know. This might be a longer conversation or a different conversation, but again, it feels like the combination of things that have been unfolding, because like now I have ungated life and ungated media, like because I'm doing ungated life now, is like it feels like now I have the spaces that I want to express the things that I want to say, as opposed to like, because I never thought I could talk about like my like directly about like how I'm trying to reshape my relationship with food over on Ungated. And it
Mm-hmm.
didn't fit on Citizen Within ostensibly as like a political website, but like it was something that needed to be expressed and that I wanted to express, and it was alive for me in a particular moment in time.
Mm-hmm.
But there wasn't a container for it, there wasn't a space for it, and
Yeah,
there wasn't like a permission structure in my head for it.
yeah,
um, and now all of that is essentially gone. um, and yeah, and it's interesting, like mixed with like the arena process, which is a whole fucking thing that we could talk about. Like that's a thing that's coming, but I've been doing it by myself because I essentially designed it for myself.
right,
And like that's allowing me to be prolific in ways without rigidity and to constantly tap into the aliveness. Like, oh, what's the interesting, alive, kind of edgy thing for me to do this week?
yeah,
And that thing always changes.
yeah,
But now that I have like that mixed with some of the AOA work, mixed with like these containers where I can just like put things, and I don't feel like I always have to write. I can make podcasts, I can make little videos, I can do like Twitter threads or whatever.
yeah,
Like it just feels like, yeah, it feels like the conditions are right under which I can just like release a tidal wave of Rob shit out into the world. Like
right.
um
And like each piece can be it doesn't have to be final, that like the piece can get you to the further piece without
Yeah.
knowing what the further thing is going to be, but like
Yeah. That's exactly it. That's the greatness cannot be planned book in a nutshell. Like their dominant metaphor is stepping stones.
mm,
It's like you can't necessarily like plan your way to such and such great thing,
yeah,
but no matter what, you can always find the stone that's in front of you, and you can follow sort of like the aliveness and your intuition to jump, to jump, to jump, and you
yeah,
can. Um, so yeah, it's
yeah,
bottom up. It's bottom up creativity. Finally, it's finally, yeah, it's creating the conditions under which my creativity can truly be bottom up.
mm,
Whereas it used to be that there were some like top down patterns still just like getting in the way.
yeah. Hmm, nice. How would you define the pattern now?
Don't make me define my very vague term. You
It's
son of
like
a bitch.
the same as like the actual manifesto. It's like what the fuck it is.
Yeah.
We've already gone like an hour and 45 minutes without saying what the hell it is.
Mm.
So yeah, let's tell people. And also, but yeah, like I'm curious if you have a
If
different
it's,
way to talk about it now.
I don't think I do. I think the way I laid it out is broadly how I still conceptualize it. I'm trying to, like, this is the thing, is like now I'm trying to figure out how to make it pithy and like easily explainable and not requiring of a 5,000 word essay. Um, so I would say the pattern is, I'm trying not to make it sound technical, but it's like a part of me wants to say like the pattern is deadness at scale, is like the pithy thing,
Mm,
is like, but broadly like, so for anybody who's like, what the fuck is Rob talking about, like the pattern is when you go into some corner of the internet that you're intrigued by,
mm,
and you start consuming the things there because they feel really exciting and alive and meaningful or useful to you.
yeah,
And then the more time you spend in this corner of the internet, in this ecosystem, you start to notice that everything is the same in some capacity. You start following some corner of YouTubers, and then all of a sudden you notice that they're all talking about the exact same thing in the exact same way, almost as if they're following like the same script.
yeah,
Um, they all have like the same little quirks. Their videos all come out the same way.
yeah,
Um, and it's, so I don't know, and that, like that's not even like the best. It's, well, I think that's the example that most people are most aware of. Um,
yeah,
but it's, it's the same thing. It's why are there empty, ridiculous, soulless Twitter threads all over the fucking place?
yeah,
It's oh man, I see. I'm so bad at just like explaining it directly. Like, and I think that's why I kind of had to lead at it indirectly through my own story.
yeah,
Um, because yeah, it's the sense that there is a deadness pervading the internet, that there is there is so much content out there that means so little, and so many people are pulled into this vortex where they think they have to do content in a specific way in
yeah,
order to meet their needs, to hit their goals, to such and such and such, to get the thing that they think they want. It
yeah,
ends up leading basically every corner of the internet, every type of content, every creative industry, every type of media that we have, because it's not just the internet. Like I mentioned, seeing it in the film world, it's in the music world,
right,
it's
yeah,
in the various forms of like the publishing world and books, and like it's
yeah,
um yeah, it's this pattern of deadness that, broadly speaking, comes from a feeling of deadness within, a feeling of resignation, a feeling that you have to do things a specific way, that you have to,
yeah.
yeah.
Well,
I don't know, and like that's a shitty explanation. Like it's such a bad explanation, and I wish I had
yeah,
better ways of articulating it now,
yeah.
but I'm
Can
still
I
not
throw
there.
out some things that
Yeah,
I'm calling from like
yeah.
so like you talked a lot about the financial insecurity factor, right? And so it's like out of fear and simultaneously in interest of self-preservation, you chased that which seemed everyone was telling you works to get
Mm-hmm.
the thing that you think you need. And so that pattern of like everything converging into like the same stuff, like the same simple pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's one story arc that like everything converges onto because it's like, well, I can't afford to like spend my time and energy making a movie that has like a narrative arc that's like non-traditional because that might not work out,
Yep.
and then I will be out several years and all the money and all this crap, and then I'll die like because I
Yeah, yeah.
make money. And like so it's like, okay, well I'll just do what seems to work according to what people are telling me or works, or like, you know, what I've seen the pattern that's working. And so
Yeah.
everything then just like gravitates into the pattern, the same formulas,
Yeah. I
because
think,
you're afraid of the consequences of doing anything else.
yeah. I think it's the fear. The fear is the big thing here. Cause like I don't think it's the formulas or the patterns or like, you know, like certain storytelling frameworks or whatever it is that are necessarily the problem.
Right. Yeah.
I think it's when you come into those things from a place of fear and
Yeah.
insecurity and not enoughness.
Yeah.
Because like I don't know, like I just like a couple. It was probably like a month or two at this point. Like I went and watched the new Top Gun movie,
Yeah.
and it was fucking sick. It was
Nice.
so good. It was alive as balls. Like like it was just like the raddest, most alive thing that I've seen come out of Hollywood. And like a lot of people, like everyone I talked to, was like, "Fuck yeah!"
Yeah.
Like you might be wackadoo Tom Cruise, but you fucking rock right now. Um, like, um, and like that movie is it follows like all of the sort of like traditional like story arcs and structures and character archetypes and yada yada yada, but there is an aliveness and a joy behind it that makes it just magnetic that you just want to drink it in.
Mm-hmm.
And I I contrast that with a lot of like anything else I've seen coming out of Hollywood where there is a seeming lack of joy,
Mm.
a seeming lack of aliveness, a seeming lack of like earnest care. And
Mm.
I do think there's something around aliveness that is like there's something around risk taking, around being a little bit out of your comfort zone, around
Mm-hmm.
following your intuition into a place that's a little bit uncomfortable, even if like the rest of something is so I don't know exactly what I'm getting at, but like I don't think it's as simple as following, you know, following story structure, following formula, following pattern inherently equals the pattern and deadness.
Right.
Like there is something about our psychological disposition and whether we're coming from a place of fear
Yeah.
and insecurity or a place of love and aliveness
Right.
that makes all of the fucking difference. And like I think that's why the deep okayness work matters, right?
Yeah.
Because because like I think the vast majority of the work that I would classify as falling into the pattern stems from fear. Like it stems
Yeah.
from people
Yeah.
feeling trapped and feeling like they're not enough, but it doesn't matter. So they're just gonna like play into the system and do it a specific way. And
Yeah.
maybe if they just play the game a certain way, then they'll prove something and they'll finally feel like enough. But
Yeah.
like there's yeah, is what I mean by deadness more than anything. Like
Yeah. Yeah. I was using the story stuff as just like one aspect of it, but like because that was like another place in the manifesto where you probably remember I was like, I mean, but like
Yeah,
but
yeah,
like story structures are like have lasted thousands of years. Like that's what makes a story great in many ways, is that it
yeah,
fits this narrative that we all like recognize. So it's like that's not the bad thing, but it's like
yeah. Well,
leaning into that because you're scared to do anything else.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
So in like the example, and maybe I should have called this out in the manifestos. There's when I was talking about films that fall into the pattern,
yeah.
I'm thinking about this event that happens in Santa Monica every year called the American Film Market, that is like a magnet for indie filmmakers,
Mm.
um, to come and like meet with distributors and sales agents and basically just like inject themselves into the traditional film distribution apparatus and all of the different pieces of it.
Yeah.
And broadly speaking, the way this machine works is that what gets bought and sold there are generally like commodity films, is like people playing like very very safe games, and everybody, like all the filmmakers essentially know this. They know what it takes to sell a film at the American film market. They know the rules of the game,
Yeah.
which then, and like indie, I don't know, it's not just indie filmmakers, but like filmmaking is more risky than just about any other form of art or expression, because it takes so much time and money and resources and energy and collaborators and whatever.
Yeah.
So it leads to people playing sort of like extra safe so that they can feed into this sort of like soulless film market that is looking for very generic things that they can just like pump out into the world because they're playing like a quantity over quantity or quantity over quality game,
Yeah.
um, that just sort of like perpetuates this, and that ends up being the vast majority of the indie films that you see across all of these different platforms, right? Are the ones that have the reach of this apparatus, as I call it. Um, so it's really interesting. Like there is beautiful alive work that's being made,
Yeah.
but it tends not to get that much love from the machine, the apparatus. Um, and I don't know. I'm sort of just like riffing at this point, but like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not the story structures. It's not any of that. It's living your creative life from a place of fear and insecurity and not enoughness. That like that's the thing. That's a huge ask to make of people,
Yeah.
to to switch to approaching creative work from a place of empowerment and love.
Yeah.
And it sounds tacky as fuck saying it out loud.
Sure.
Um,
But I
yeah,
agree with you though.
yeah.
I mean,
But
the
like,
thing.
what?
Oh, your mid thought.
Oh, I guess it's just like this idea that's like it's in the manifesto somewhere, is that like even though it feels really 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 unsafe
Mm.
to play the game from a place of empowerment and love, and to make some like creatively risky decisions that are a little bit more,
Mm.
authentic, for lack of a better word,
Yeah.
and alive to you.
Yeah.
Like ironically, that tends to be the thing that actually gets more attention, earns more affection, gets more word of mouth, it gets a lot of the things that we're actually chasing.
Yeah.
Whereas playing the game from a place of fear ends up with us creating things that are, for all intents and purposes, commodities, like easily replaceable parts in this giant media machine.
Right.
Um,
So I would caution against us saying that, like, oh well, actually, the best way, the secret way,
mm,
to get all that accolades and shit that you want is actually to do this. It's like it's your that's I think that's probably part of it, right? Is like
mm,
the and that's like as marketers too. It's like letting people never question the thing that they want and then just telling them like, oh, there's a better way to get that.
yeah,
Um, so they're still going after the same thing for the same reasons, etc. Right?
mm,
There's just some new fancy way to get it. So like I would say I would want to be cautious about being like doing anything, like doing things from place of love and courage and stuff. Like it's not in order to get the same things that you're trying to get by following
Mm.
the pattern.
Yeah.
I mean, that gets complicated, and as marketers, it's a bad thing to say because it's like you can't
Yeah.
make big ass promises as well because you're not speaking directly to the thing that people think and know that they want. Um, but like thinking
Yeah.
about in your food thing, right? It's like you don't, you have been like emotionally satisfied, for lack of a better way of putting it right now. Like your emotional situation is so much different that like you're not now needing to eat to fill in the hole
Yeah.
as it was for me. And like, but how did like nowadays I could say with eating, it's like I pretty much eat as much as I want of like whatever I want whenever I want to. And I
Mm-hmm.
weigh like my high school weight, and like I've never been fitter as an adult. But like the thing is that the difference is that I what I want is different,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Yeah.
uh
Well,
just yeah, that like
yeah.
it's
I,
not
and
just a secret strategy to get the same thing.
no, and that's the thing, right? Is like, I don't know, you know this as well as you have to meeting people where they are and like taking them on a journey. And like, sometimes you have to sell the sizzle and like give the
Yeah,
steak or whatever it is. Like,
for sure.
and like, this is what I think this is why I'm so like fond of the Trojan horse analogy or metaphor
Yeah.
is like people are ostensibly coming to me for marketing and creativity and whatever else, and it's a lot of it is this sort of like deep regenerative philosophy developmental shit is like moving up, and
Yeah.
but fundamentally like starting to play the game in a different way
Yeah.
results in you wanting different things over time and realizing that the things you thought you wanted are not quite the thing.
Right.
So it's, yeah, like I think it's a process,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
maybe people don't embark on that process without some sort of promise up front that
Right.
playing the game this way is likely to get you the thing you think you want right now. And like
Yeah.
I actually, and I believe that 100%. By the way, like I tend to think the most alive and joyful creator is the one that will always win in the long term.
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
um, so yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know where I'm going with
But
that.
well, has it, because I feel like in my just the way that I think about this nowadays, it's like the whole idea of like winning because you're not even
Yeah,
playing the same
yeah,
game. Like,
yeah.
so
Well, yeah. I think about this like the infinite game thing is like designing
yeah,
games that you want to,
yeah,
and in an infinite game there is no winning. I think that might just be a force of habit. It's kind of like
yeah,
using war metaphors or using battle metaphors or
yeah,
using game metaphors.
right.
But
But well, one thing that I like about the games, maybe this is because of all my improv time, is like when I think of game, I don't immediately think of something that has like a winning as an outcome. I think of improv games, which literally are there's no such thing as winning them.
yeah,
It's like an endless play.
yeah,
Um,
infinite games.
so
Yeah,
yeah,
it's a finite versus infinite game. Yeah,
yeah. So anyway, we could get to
yeah,
that, but yeah, like you're doing your own fucking thing, and like in that sense, you're winning
yeah.
because
Well,
losing would be the doing the thing that you don't want to do. Like,
yeah, and that's the thing, right? Is like if you look at most of the I hate the word creators too. I'm just like realizing how I hate all of our common language. Like none of it is adequate and all of it has just like baggage that
yeah,
irritates the shit out of me. But like if you look at the people who are succeeding at online business or online creativity or being a creator or whatever today,
yeah,
the vast majority of them are not like the overnight success flash in the pan types. The vast majority of them have been doing this for 10
yeah.
years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they're just now starting to reap a lot of the rewards of like compounding work put in over the years. Um, And I'm pretty bought into the thesis that it's the people who stay in the game the longest who
Mhm.
end up reaping disproportionate rewards later on.
Mhm.
And I believe the way to stay in the game
Yeah.
is to fucking enjoy yourself and not like force yourself through
Yeah.
this like array of like best practices that are completely out of alignment with how you want to show up, but you think you have to do it anyway because it just builds all of the emotional pressure.
Yeah.
Is like if you can enjoy your creative work and it's intrinsically alive, or like I don't know, it feels alive to you and exciting to put it out,
Yeah.
it starts attracting, like it helps you find the others. It's this tool for connection and communication and communing with people who are like you, who enrich your life,
Yeah.
that then sort of incentivizes you to create more. And like that's so like there's something here around creating these cycles of aliveness, like these feedback loops of aliveness and joy and connection and eventually meaning, that just fundamentally leads you to want to keep playing because it feels so good.
Yeah.
um and so that's all I mean when I say win the game, right? Is like it gets you to that place where you're rich in friends, you're likely rich in cash money, you're rich creatively because you're fully expressed and authentic.
Yeah.
um and all of these different needs that we have um are better met by playing from love and empowerment and joy than playing from fear and scarcity and insecurity.
And to like add on to that, something you mentioned in the manifesto about like people who have built extremely successful financially or whatever, like businesses, large ones, following these best practices, who you have gotten to know and seen directly that they're miserable in it, right? So it's like they've succeeded and they won in that respect, but what they actually wanted and like what they actually were hoping to win at, they did not win it.
Yeah. Yeah, I wish that weren't so common. Like that's the thing, is like I don't want people to build prisons for themselves, right?
Yeah.
To feel I don't want for people to feel trapped even. I don't know, it's the same thing as golden handcuffs, right?
Yeah.
It's yeah, but it seems like a pretty common occurrence across the creator economy, so to speak, that
Yeah.
there are a lot of people who get to a place of being relatively big. And I think a lot of it is like in like the political landscape
Mm.
where people essentially get captured by an audience and get captured by like playing out like one shtick in the culture war, for lack of a better way of putting it. Like
Right.
even if they got into it because they were thoughtful, they wanted to increase the thoughtfulness of political conversation,
Mm.
but eventually they find that thing that is economically successful and then they start doubling down on it because that's a thing, and then eventually they're just like a shell of their former ideals, they're a shell of their former self, and they
Right.
feel like they can't express what they actually think because their audience will tear their head off.
Right.
like
Yeah.
like it's really scary and sad, and I think watching it play out in the political space has made me wary of how it plays out in
Mm.
marketing and productivity and any of these other fairly big markets.
Yeah. It reminds me of in this interview with that rapper Saba, who I really like.
Yeah.
He was referencing someone who he looks up to, and I suspect he was talking about Kanye, but I don't know for sure. But who he had heard say that like with every album that they released, they wanted to like lose like 40% of their fan base
Mm.
because that meant that they were like genuinely doing something new and different.
Yeah.
You know, I like that. I mean, it's like a scary idea, but at the
Yeah.
same, like, yeah,
Well, it's something I'm thinking a lot about now, right? Which is that's kind of that's kind of implied with being like a self-renewing being,
mm,
is like as I evolve, there are inevitably going to be people who get left behind. And like, you know, it's one of those things that you kind of have to trust that you're going to pick up new people, and that it's just this process of like, so I don't know, like I'm thinking about like 1,000 true fans, but it's not a static thing.
right,
like 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 somebody might be a true fan of yours for 5 years, and then you evolve because you're following the aliveness, the curiosity. You're trying to evolve in ways that make your life more meaningful.
Yeah.
And it just happens to fall out of sync with 5, 10, 20% of your fans.
Yeah.
And I feel like they're like just sort of like accepting that early on, and
Right.
accepting that, the 80% or 60% or however much will stay with you through this next phase. Like
Yeah.
that's how it feels with me jumping from filmmaker freedom to ungated, is
Mhm.
like, I don't know, I probably lost 10% of my list,
Mhm.
15% of my list, because I was like, yo, this is what's happening now. If you
Mhm.
don't like it, please unsubscribe.
Yeah.
um but yeah, it feels like sort of embracing that as like a natural ongoing part of the journey. um it feels
Yeah.
like a healthier expectation to have than like everybody who becomes a fan must always remain a fan. Like it leads to sort of an attachment that
Yeah.
can't be
How,
healthy.
how much business angst and investment of money and all sorts of stuff there is in being like, we must never let customers move on.
Oh my god. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, I think that we've been on for like 2 hours. I'm wondering if you want to switch gears and look at the questions that we got from people on Twitter.
I do. Although, let me look at the questions real quick, because
And also,
maybe
I mean, we
they'll.
don't have to answer all of them. Like they're just there
Yeah.
if you want.
Mm. I don't remember. I think this might have been Rebecca Madison. In
Yeah, I
your
think
field
that's
of work, who inspires you? Do you have role models? Yes. I like, the wild thing is like, I have I have marketing role models. Like I think like I always talk about how I divide like my marketing life into like a pre Andre Chaperone era and a post.
Mhm.
But I also feel like I'm now in the like post Andre Chaperone era. And it like I like this is the thing, right? Is like I've realized how top down his approach to everything is. Like it's extraordinarily
Yeah.
engineered,
Yeah.
and it's very, very fucking tedious to actually implement in the way that he recommends. And like there's a lot of really beautiful, well thought through philosophy there
Yeah.
that is really generous and friendly, and that has shaped my thinking a lot. I've
Yeah.
realized that like the rigidity of his top down approach is not something that fits me. And I think, and realizing that and accepting that was a big part of what led me into like bottom up
Yeah.
and wanting this more fluid, emergent way of approaching marketing
Yeah.
that isn't predicated on having all of the right answers up front and constructing like the perfect system to create happy customers. It's essentially about giving up giving up the need to have all of the answers in the perfect system, and trusting that if you show up in the world in the right way, you can create happy customers.
Yeah.
But like that's the big break I've made there. But I still fucking love Andre Chaperone and probably forever will.
Yeah.
Um, the next big one's just fucking Michael Ashcroft, man.
Yeah.
Like I also divide my life as a creator and as a person who like sells courses and things like that
Mm.
into like pre-Michael and post-Michael phases.
Mm.
Was like he's like watching what he's done with his Alexander technique course,
Yeah.
and seeing how he was able to sell like 200 grand worth of that wildly esoteric like,
Mm.
like whatever thing, mostly just by being a friendly guy on Twitter
Yeah.
and without a shit ton of like fancy funnels and email things in the background, no Facebook ads, none of this bullshit. Like is really just through being really friendly and prolific on Twitter,
Yeah.
having a great course that actually like helps people like feel into what expanded awareness is, so that they start talking about it, and it creates a lot of cool social proof and word of mouth things.
Yeah.
um but he's really the guy that broke wide open the idea that most of the shoulds that I had in my brain for how you can be like a person who sells things online. Um, he basically, yeah, and that's the thing, like, is like everything I'm doing now, where I'm just kind of like having a lot of fun and shit posting and being silly and occasionally like writing interesting, thoughtful stuff, but mostly just being a goof.
Yeah.
Um, most of that is like directly downstream from encountering him and getting to know him as a friend. And I hired as him a coach for a while, and I've done some consulting for him on his business, and like we've been close like that. But like he was really the pattern interrupt that was like, whoa, holy shit, the way I have been conceptualizing online business,
Yeah.
um clearly this guy doesn't fit the pattern, and I'm way more intrigued by what he's doing than what anybody else selling courses online is doing.
Yeah.
um
Yeah. And it's like a funny thing because he's not a marketer. And
yeah,
so it's like, oh, you're one
well,
answer, at least so far, for post or post Andre Chaperone is this guy who's
yeah,
not a marketer. Like,
yeah. Well, and this is the funny thing is like when I talk about me sort of consulting with him,
yeah,
is like I've like he like, I don't know, he's had some sales slumps with the AT course, and he's had some things where like he's like really like, how can I start picking up the pace in my business and making it a little bit more reliable.
yeah.
And then he starts going down like the best practices of the online course world rabbit hole.
Mm,
um and it's kind of been like my place to be like, bro, please do not murder what makes you special by becoming like everybody else, because what you're onto here is bigger than I think you realize. Like
mm,
what you've been able to create here,
mm.
um is has been is I think inspiring way more people than just me. And I think I'm kind of amplifying it,
Yeah.
but I think without really realizing it, Michael stumbled into, and I think Visa is kind of on that beat as well with the way he sells his ebooks. But I like Michael seems more like the pinnacle of it, right? Um, just like the most purely expressed version of it.
I
Yeah,
mean,
I
he seems a bit less reluctant to sell than Visa.
yeah, yeah, definitely is. I don't. It's
No,
wild how
even though Visa
little.
is the one that's a marketer and Michael's not. But
Yeah, yeah. It's the funny thing too, is like, right, I'm a marketer, I know how to sell, and I'm only just now getting over some of like the weird reluctance I had around talking about my shit and pointing people towards my offers or my invitations or whatever I'm calling them
yeah,
now. But yeah, that took psychological work and emotional work.
yeah.
um but yeah, Michael is the bee's knees, and I love him dearly. And I
Doesn't
really do think
doesn't
like
run a business. He runs a business, online business. I gotta throw some of my dumb shit in there. Online business guru.
yeah, while he was in Mexico, I just like imagine him doing that. So like, I will help you with your business.
All right, dude. I got a little racist. Just kidding. Little bit, little
Yeah,
bit
a little
friendly,
bit.
not a bad kind. The real racist thing is if you don't like cilantro. Uh,
Yeah, I'll take
I
that
hope
type of
no one
wave.
else hears it. You will be canceled. Um,
Everybody knows. Like I've made
I
my
realized
stance on
that
cilantro.
we had our little war and no one canceled you. So,
Uh,
nice. That's cool. Michael,
it's cute.
these
Yeah,
these knees.
yeah. I probably have other people who are really inspiring to me.
Sure.
Craig Mod is a name that comes to
Oh
mind.
yeah, right.
It's just like the perfect example of somebody who's doing his own thing. Like he has built his life
His own
by
path.
walking around Japan and like taking photos and writing little essays
Mhm.
and building what's literally like I would call it like the purest example of 1,000 True Fans style membership business I've ever seen. And
Yeah.
it is fucking incredible. I love that
Also,
guy.
like perhaps one of the best examples of like a lifestyle business because it's like
Yeah,
so non-conducive to like a business lifestyle.
yeah,
Just like take long ass walks for long periods of time. Like you
yeah,
can't just be a dude that sits out down at a desk all day running a business.
yeah.
Yeah.
And and just like he's also produced, like when I think about like this idea of being a communicator, like I think a lot of that is kind of inspired by the way he's a fabulous writer,
Mm,
but like he's got the photography side, which he's really capable at.
mm,
He makes videos. I think he does some podcasts somewhere.
yeah.
Um, and like he went and made like he made this physical book that he poured a ton of fucking love into, and it's
Mm.
super nerdy. It's just like what's it called, like Kissa by Kissa, where he just like documents like Japanese pizza toast or some shit. I don't know. I haven't read it, but like it's so nerdy and niche, but like he puts so much love and care into making this thing and like building something that's beautiful and artisanal.
Yeah.
And like there's a lot of ways to make a coffee table book that are beholden to the pattern, that are
Yeah.
just sort of like the generic version of it.
Yeah.
And then there's what Craig Maude did, like, and has since like sold out every print run he's done of that thing.
Nice.
So he's the other person. I'm like really, really inspired by Craig Maude.
Yeah.
And I kind of aspire, I think, more than anything else to that to that type of business and to that type of life myself.
Mhm.
Like between like the ungated life and the ungated media and the memberships that I have. Um, like I think that's what I'm trying to create.
Yeah.
Or at least that's my intuition right now.
Nice.
All right, next question. What is one thing every Twitter user could do to contribute to building a more beautiful internet? Bambi.
Use the use the deer emoji.
Yeah, everywhere you go. Um, follow the aliveness.
Yeah.
I think it's really as simple as that. Is
Give me 5 steps. Give me
fuck.
3 steps.
I'm gonna give you 2 simple steps and one very, very complicated step. No, like that's the thing. Is like I'm more and more I'm realizing the advice for all of this stuff is so simple and so trite. Is kind of like be yourself, which I hate as advice because I don't know what it means, but like there's something about understanding who you are,
Mhm.
who you want to be, what your gifts are, what makes you feel alive,
Yeah.
and then honoring that and trusting that and bringing that forth into how you show up on Twitter or on your blog or on YouTube or on a podcast. That is the thing, is the aliveness. Like, and I think more people doing that creates a diversity of alivenesses.
Yeah.
And that is like the most beautiful thing I can imagine. Like right now we have a conformity of deadnesses and I want a diversity of alivenesses. Like
Yeah.
I think that's the most beautiful internet I can imagine.
Yeah. I should say, I mean, Rebecca might have been asking that just as like a general question for like other people. But like I feel that she does what you're describing very, very well.
Yeah. No, Rebecca's the bee's knees. Like actually, I need a better thing than bee's knees because Michael is the bee's knees. What's another like old timey 20s slang thing is like Rebecca is the cat's meow.
Yeah. Well,
Like,
she could be the queen bee's knees.
yeah, it's true. Um, yeah, and it's like I don't know the way she writes and the vulnerability with which she writes, and then she just
Yeah.
like posts some photos of her chickens, which she loves.
It's
Like
like
it's so fun and alive and joyful, and it's so brutal, like brutally honest in ways that almost nobody else is on Twitter.
right.
That makes it deeply deeply compelling. Um, and yeah, so I think
Her
I don't know.
her threads, or at least the ones that I've read, where she talks about like the listening service that she does.
Yeah,
In ways it's like recognizable as like this is a sales pitch thread, but at the same time it's like so not that, in such like a nice gentle way, or like even though you know what it is, like it doesn't bother you at all. It's like, oh yeah, she's just giving me the information that I need to know around this stuff in a really nice way.
yeah.
And it also doesn't
That
seem hyper like engineered or anything. It's just like, yeah, here's me, and like here's how I got here, and
yeah.
people like just benefit from it, and etc. Yeah.
Yeah. It strikes me as like the perfect articulation of like what I mean with the distinction between an offer and an invitation.
Mm-hmm.
Is like I think like there's something around the word offer to me that kind of, and again, this is all my baggage, but it kind of connotes like the fear, scarcity, insecurity. How can I craft this thing so that it like perfectly gets what I want?
Yeah.
Whereas like an invitation is like the love, empowerment, authenticity. Like, here I created a thing. I'm going to
Yeah.
tell you about it because I think it's generous to share what I'm up to.
Yeah. It's so
But it,
weird. That's the connotation of those two words. It's like almost backwards. Like an offer, like an offering.
oh, like a true offer,
And
like
she
is like a,
offered was like, I am gonna like give this thing to you because
yeah,
I like just want to give it.
yeah.
Make an
Oh,
offering
that's,
to a fucking god, like
yeah, it's sacred
for
to make
of
an offer to
yourself.
somebody. Like it's vulnerable.
And an invite, on the other hand, is like, I'm not gonna give you a thing, but if you want it, like you could come.
Yeah. Dude, that's so wild just how much like leaning into the marketing world and the way that marketers conceptualize what an offer is has just like poisoned that word for me.
Yeah, but it totally has that. Even to me, like I didn't really think of that until you were describing
Dude,
it.
no, I didn't like, that's profound. Is just like making an offering, making a, yeah, just like the sacredness of it, the vulnerability of it is kind of blowing my mind right now.
That's weird. We should bring the offer back.
Yeah,
Make real offerings.
I was gonna say make offers great again. We'll get hats. um, who are your biggest supporters and what have they done that's made you feel supported? Oh, that's a scary question. What the fuck? Um, honestly, it's a lot of the people on Twitter right now.
Yeah.
Like I kind of feel like there's a cutoff between my old life, and there's a lot of people on my like on my email list who still support me and who are in my community who come from my filmmaking days. But
Yeah.
like outside of, you know, outside of the basic ones, like my parents, like my mom in particular,
Mm.
um yeah, it's been the people I've encountered on the internet, and over the last 2 years, like it's just been more and more and more. Yeah, I'm drawing a blank on names, but like obviously Michael's been a huge one. You've been a huge one. Um, and there's just so many people I encounter like in the ungated community in my little corners of Twitter who are so vocally supportive and who are cheering me on and who um point out when the things that I do actually matter to them. Like that's the thing is like I'm now getting into this habit of doing this with like anybody who's doing creative work that I resonate with or that really helps me in some way, is not keeping that information to myself
Yeah.
as I might have in the past, but just sharing it
Yeah.
because I know how much it's mattered to me in my like like playing the emotional game of doing this type of work.
Mm.
Is like is like knowing that there are real people out there who have encountered what you're up to, and it mattered to them and it connected with them, it helped them in some way. Like actually knowing that and hearing that from people
Yeah.
like lights the fire so much more than just having some abstract conception of like, that's my audience, I'm
Right.
gonna add some value to them now. Like 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 knowing
Well,
that it's all just real people is
yeah.
like the thing.
Yeah. And imagine that, like giving, telling people why something mattered to you that they did, not because you're just trying to leave a testimonial so that there's like some business like value that you get later on, which is such a fucking huge thing in internet marketing world. It's like, oh, I'm going to strategically write a review of this person's course that I took so that I can like get, but whatever, right? Or just like leave a testimonial so that they will put it on their sales page, and then like people will see me and then they'll like find my courses. And yeah.
Yeah, yeah, there's something, I don't know, there's an interesting thing there around connecting for the sake of connecting. connecting because connecting feels good and wholesome and nurturing, and it helps us meet our needs, versus I think it all comes down to this idea of treating people as ends unto themselves instead of means to an end. Like that is like really, really profound. And
Right.
again, like is I think contrary to a lot of how we're wired, not how we're wired, but like how we're conditioned to think, especially we've spent a lot of time in the marketing world and the like the networking and business world. Like there's a lot of trying to use other people in selfish ways. And like that's the biggest thing, right? Is like I think I used to think like that. And over the last 18 months, as I've just like made a lot of friends for the sake of making friends, like that's been like one of the biggest things that's changed, I think.
Almost like using people as content.
Using people as content. What does that mean?
Content, where if content is like you simply need to make it and it just exists to function for like some ulterior purpose, rather than making it because you enjoy making it and you want to engage with the people who engage with it.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Just the building block.
Yeah, it's just connecting because connecting feels good. It's the game.
Yeah.
Word. What is next? There's so many good people out there who are not yet really on the internet. They're online, they consume content, but they are not making themselves known and building stuff and sharing their ideas. How do we show them what a beautiful internet exists and onboard them? Who asked this question? Is that you? Did you ask this?
No.
This
I can go look. I have the picture of her in my mind, but I don't know her name. Cecile.
Oh, yeah. That's Michael's partner. Yeah, she's rad. I think this is one of those things where things like case studies really, really, really make a difference. Is because I think we all need to see somebody, or like the vast majority of us need to see somebody like us making a leap similar to the one that we're kind of curious about making ourselves, in order for us to feel the sense of safety that we need to be able to do that. So like this is part of what I want to do more of on Ungated, is to like highlight the diversity of the different types of people who are doing this 1,000 true fans thing, so that it doesn't turn into like I don't know, like this is my biggest worry, is that Ungated turns into yet another like course makers serving course makers who serve course makers, like yada yada yada. It's like I'm trying everything in my power to like really reach out into diverse corners of the internet and inspire diverse types of people. And it's a bit of a chicken and an egg thing, right? But I think that's like the conceptual answer, is that we like wherever we are, we need to see somebody like us making a leap for us to feel the courage to make that leap ourselves. And the rest of it is like, I don't know. There's something around this idea of leaps of faith, is like being a model in the world of what happens when you take certain leaps of faith. Like this is broadly how I conceive my world now. And like my role online now is like,
sorry, one
guy. Okay. Yep. Hello again.
Imperfection in the recording. I suppose I could cut it out maybe. whatever.
Yeah. What was I saying? Oh, leaps of faith.
Mhm.
Um, like it feels like I've made a bunch of leaps of faith in my life.
Mhm.
Moving from guy who does marketing a very traditional way and who knows his shit about it into this very, very uncertain whatever space that
Mhm.
like the seeds that Michael planted basically. It was like, how have I made the journey from like very serious button down marketer to guy who just like shit posts on Twitter
Mhm.
and in fact now believes that that's better marketing than all of the shit I used to do that was like
Mhm.
very well engineered.
Mhm.
Um, but like there's so many leaps of faith there, and like I think it matters to show up publicly as somebody who's doing things that are a little bit scary,
Mhm.
um, regardless. Like, and to show up day in and day out and model what that's like for people.
Yeah.
Because I've had people talk to me about it and be like, I'm really inspired by how you show up on Twitter. And at this point, I'm just like, I'm just having fun and fucking around.
Yeah.
But like early on, it was inspiring for me to see Michael. It was inspiring me for me to see Visa
Yeah.
and other various like players in this internet.
Yeah.
Another name that comes to mind is a guy named Richard Bartlett.
Yep.
Like he's one
It
of
was
my
like
fucking
one of the
favorite
first
people.
people that I followed on Twitter, actually.
Yeah, yeah. Like I'm still fucking inspired like by how he sort of like weaves shit posting and like very serious social commentary together. Like that's kind of what I aspire to. Like it's like it's his art. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Um, but like seeing that modeled for me day in and day out on a platform like Twitter,
Yeah.
um, it plants the seeds of possibility for me.
Yeah.
And like even if I'm not quite there emotionally yet, like it um like that's the thing is like I feel like I'm emotionally ready now to be like more prolific with what I'm actually thinking and not just be silly. Like
Yeah.
so I think maybe the best metaphor is just like planting, like modeling behavior and like constantly planting seeds in the minds of the people around you. Like they may not immediately sprout,
Yeah.
but if you keep showing up and planting seeds and nurturing people and encouraging people, like that's the other thing is always encourage people.
Mm.
Always. Like you never know when encouraging somebody at the right moment might completely change the direction of their life.
And that's something
Um,
that Michael's very good at.
yeah, 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 absolutely is.
Uh,
Visa too, I think.
I
But
was
it's
about to. I just wanted to like say a public thank you to Michael for a different thing, but like last year, like I stumbled on you, however, and I was like, yeah, that's very much as has proven to be true, like how I see marketing, how I've been thinking about marketing for a long time from within my own marketing career. And it was like inspiring to see that you had like already begun to build a thing that was speaking to that. So I was like, oh, this guy seems cool, man. Like, and then, um, and Michael was the first one that sort of like linked us in just in as much as like I put that tweet right of like if there was a rehab for marketers, I would check in. And then he just like he might have even literally just like tagged you with like eyeballs or something.
yeah,
Like, and it wasn't even from there that we connected, but it was like, oh, like this guy that I do follow connected, like put him like
yeah,
to see my tweet, and then however many months later, like we finally do.
yeah,
So
dude, and
yeah,
that's it, right? Is like, where did I
it'll-
initially like? And that's the thing, right? Is like connecting people to each other,
yeah,
encouraging people, like, and sharing, yeah, sharing what you know, sharing what your journey is,
yeah,
being a model for all of these things. Like, I think all of that sort of like adds up, and you can't control it. It's not like I don't know, it's the non-coercive marketing thing, right? Is like you can show up in the world in a particular way, you can embody these loving behaviors, these kind behaviors, these connective behaviors,
yeah,
but we can't control other people's journeys and when they'll be ready. All we can do is create the conditions under which one day they're most likely to be ready if they decide to take that leap.
yeah,
Um, and that feels like the thing.
yeah,
It's just like keep showing up and keep loving people and keep lifting the boats. Yeah, baby.
yeah.
I love that
Lift,
question.
don't burn them.
Yeah. Okay, I think this was Trace, and I remember responding in a stupid, snarky way. What's one marketing concept you still don't fully understand?
Wish they could understand me.
I like, and that's the funny thing is like it's silly and snarky, but like there is a part of me that feels almost like I've transcended marketing concepts.
Yeah.
In that I don't really think about them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not filtering my decisions through the lens of like, is this good positioning? What jobs am I trying to do? Like, how does this say about my brand? Like I'm just sort of like living and having fun and creating things that are alive and that I think would be useful. And the amount of like rigidity that's gotten rid of, and the amount of joy that's brought to my life. And the fact that like the way I'm showing up now seems to work better than when I rigidly adhered to marketing concepts. Like there's something really wild there. But in the spirit of the question, the one that I wish I like is one that I understand conceptually fairly well, but haven't implemented. And I was really exploring the frontiers of this when I began my whole journey of like unlearning everything about marketing is jobs to be done. And really getting in the weeds on customer research and customer interviews and market research, and really understanding the functional, the social, the emotional jobs that our products and services get hired for. Yeah. I never really like operationalized that in any kind of real way. I was captivated by it in 2020. Yeah. And I still think it would be useful in a lot of different ways. Yeah. But I never really fully went down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. I mean, I think with that stuff, it's so funny, like user experience shit, like customer interviews and stuff. It's like marketers discovering the possibility for like genuinely just getting to know people.
Like, yeah, but they need like a framework and like a justification for it.
Yeah, it's like, well, it's slightly different, but like all the jobs to be done shit, like if you just like reflect on yourself in like a genuine way, like you will discover so much.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, it doesn't come with like all the fucking studies and like you can't prove it. Like it's like we've had tested lists on a bunch of people, but like I've been spending so much fucking time like reflecting on my relationship to money and like my relationship to marketing as a consumer and as a marketer. And it's like, you know, I've discovered like so much fucking shit, which is true for like a lot of other fucking people, you know?
Yeah.
It only involved one person, but like I've been doing jobs to be done research on myself for years now. And like,
yeah.
So it's funny when, yeah, you run into these things like, oh my gosh, like, did you know that like you could talk to like your customers and be like, what do you actually want, dude?
Yeah. What's wild too is like, it feels like that's kind of built into the architecture of how I've always done it. Like, I don't know, even back when I was like teaching people how to like find niches or find like little like subcultures or markets or whatever. Yeah. Like all of it started from a foundation of free writing. Like this is probably the thing that I've been teaching longest that has like stayed, just like stayed basically untouched. And it's the more you understand yourself and the various like emotional like layers of yourself, the more you can go out into the world and find your people. The more you can start creating messaging that not only resonates with you, but them. The more you can create a product that will satisfy your needs and meet your jobs and also do theirs because you found the others. Right. Like, but it all starts from that place. And yeah.
Like, well, with jobs to be done, it's like it is operationalized and it's broke down very analytically. So it's like it would be interesting to use that as like a lens through which to do introspection.
Yeah.
I kind of do that, like having thought about all the shit that I've bought over the years, like why, like what was I really wanting out of it, etc. But like not specifically with those concepts of jobs to be done. But even without using that layer, like it's proven extremely valuable and shaped my buying behavior like radically. But anyway, I'm stealing the question from you, but like, yeah,
No, I
jobs.
mean that was a great detour. Um, that
It's just,
was yeah,
it
it
is
is.
it is though. It's like it's a radical idea, which I think gets a lot of people excited because the norm is to just view your customer as some like piece of data with a wallet,
Yeah,
right? So they're not fully fledged human beings.
yeah,
And so it
yeah,
is
exactly.
to say like,
Yeah,
oh, maybe they are, and you could like learn about them. It's like, what?
or yeah, or even just like this broader move of like moving away from like this abstract notion of a market towards just like, oh, we're actually interacting with people who have
Yeah,
emotional needs and shit.
right.
Um, yeah. And I think that was what attracted me to it, right? Is like, because when I always talked about niches, that's what it was about. It was like serve your niche, serve your whatever. But it was this concept of like these like hyper niche subcultures or markets that was very, very depersonalized.
Mm,
Um, and
yeah,
yeah.
markets. Yeah,
Just
markets, schmarkets.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's all just people, man.
it is people. That's my classic Twitter thing that I haven't retweeted in a while. It's like we're all just people talking to people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, okay. So
Mm.
is there a reason why he's specifying 2014?
I don't know. If you could go back in time to the summer of 2014 and say just 6 words, 6 words to yourself, what would you say?
I would say something.
Hold on. I'm thinking of like snarky answers. It's just like have fun, get chicks, have more fun. I don't know. Like I don't know exactly what there is.
Have
I
fun.
think
Chicks have fun.
there's something like really profound there though around. I think one of like some of the words are just like let go of the need to control things or like it's just like yeah, it's something that is probably like the biggest lever
Yeah.
is like you do not have to be in control.
Mhm.
um I
Ah.
don't I'm not going to follow his stupid 6 word constraint, but um which is funny because I to make people like for people to apply to get into my community I make them write a haiku.
Right.
um so maybe I should honor Trace's constraint. Have fun, get chicks,
Dude.
surrender control.
Oh, that's 7, isn't it?
No, it isn't.
Oh,
No.
oh, you're
Yeah.
yeah, it's you too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I counted in a stupid way.
Um, I have, I have, I
Yeah.
have,
Let her
yeah,
rip.
6 words. Dude, just love yourself.com. Go there. Yeah.
Touche. That's a better answer than mine.
It's a great website. Everyone should go check it out.
Do you still do stuff on that website? Do you still post stuff there? Or is it more just like the old essays that you wrote with like Megan?
But like the Shift 30 thing right now is the front page.
Yeah.
I mean, I put the Kendrick thing up there, and
Nice.
so the Kendrick thing's there. The Shift 30 message is up there. All of my essays are there. All my writing is there, and more writing than I've actually put on Twitter is there.
Nice.
Um,
I remember reading some of
yeah.
posts. It's good stuff.
Yeah, that's my answer in 6 words.
It's a really good one.
But also, if I don't count dot as a word and I count
Yeah.
yourself as 2 words, this is why I named the website that. Dude, just love yourself. grab you by the shoulder, grab yourself by the shoulder. It's like,
Yeah,
dude, just
dude,
yourself.
it's the thing, man. It's the thing. All right, last question. What's one question you desperately wish more people would ask you?
Mm.
I don't know. The first thing that comes to mind is something along the lines of like, what are you struggling with right now? But I don't think that's the question. Like, it's not a very compelling question to me, but it is one that like I feel like there's something there around like going to vulnerable places with people.
Mm.
Um, that tends to lead to connection. Hello, cat.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't think that's it. That's not a good answer. I'm gonna mull on it some more.
What's the name of your cat?
His name is Swanson. He's sometimes a good boy,
Ask you that.
sometimes a yeah, sometimes a very naughty boy.
Do you wish more people would ask you that?
Everybody asked me that.
No. I feel
That's
like I've
the
never actually asked you
you son of a bitch. How
that.
dare you not hold my cat in high enough regard for understanding his name or knowing his name. Um, dude, this cat is in a mood. He's about to cause some mayhem and like knock shit off my desk. Um, yeah, I don't know. Like this one is just kind of drawing a blank for me. It's probably because I'm tired and hungry, and we've been going for 3 hours.
Yeah.
Um,
How about this as an answer for us both? How can I pay you more money?
oh, fuck yeah, yeah.
I would love it if people just asked me that every day.
I've gotten variations of that before, mostly because I've made my offers so like hard to find and people are like, I resonate with what you're doing, but like, how do I pay you, man?
Yeah.
Like,
How can I
which has
give you
made
money?
yeah, it's made me realize that I really gotta fucking step up my game.
Mm. Mm.
Just like tell people what I do.
That reminds me of like one time Michael Ashcroft was like posting, he's like sales have been down for the Alexander Technique course. And I know that like when I just like mention it more often, like I get more sales. And then he like
Yeah.
followed up on that later. He's like, yes, I've been mentioning it more often and like I get paid more.
Whoa.
It's like, yeah, just tell people that you can that they can give you money for the thing that's helping them.
I think that was a formative moment for me as well. It's like, holy shit, I can just like talk about what I make and money will come. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, that's crazy.
but yeah, I'm going to be talking way more soon about the things I make, specifically the arena. That's a
Nice,
big thing that's coming soon.
nice. Crazy the yeah, I mean like the arena was
Yeah.
the backstory to that's interesting. We don't have to talk about it, but just like
No, but
how
it may very well not exist had Michael not had not connected us like that.
mm, that's going back further than I was thinking, but yeah, like
Well, no, like it was like the first in a chain of events, right?
yeah, yeah,
Um, but had you and I not like connected and like started talking and yeah,
yeah, because it was like while we were still I think it was while we were still going through the connection course, right? It was like or maybe the idea to do something predated starting the connection course and then like lasted the while. It was like, let's make a thing. And then I think it's like a good example of like the following the aliveness thing is that like that was super alive for you at the time to make a thing
yeah,
of that particular nature. And for me, it was like, I'm like, no, I think genuinely, if I do that right now, it's gonna be like less alive and I'm just going to be dragging my feet.
Mhm.
So just like, I'm going to bow out of this, even though like it sounds exciting. And like, also then it's like, you'd make it your thing, like make it like what's most alive for you. And you don't have to negotiate that shit with me, right? Like,
Yeah.
or like, oh, like let's make a thing that we both want it to be. It's like, no, make the thing that you fucking want.
And I have, right? Like that's the interesting thing is like I kind of crafted this process for myself because I
Yeah.
wanted it to break some of my creative
Yeah.
patterns or like, and it, yeah, it does what I want it to do for me. And now I'm like excited to share it with the others,
Yeah.
whoever these mysterious others are. Like
Right.
I'm going to find them and I will
Yeah.
use my very specific set of skills to track them down and do some Liam Neeson shit.
Also, like you met Sam. Well, I mean, maybe it's not specifically the arena, but like Sam connected with you through your work.
Yeah.
And then he was in the arena, right?
Yeah. Just like he found me like a week or two before I ran that beta version of the
Yeah,
arena.
that sounds, yeah, I remember that now. And then like you were like, oh, I think you guys would like kind of get along with some of the stuff that we talk about. And then like I finally did connect with him and it's like, dude, we really get along. And
Yeah.
then like I literally interviewed him like 4 days ago or whatever, right? Like, so it's like such a funny, like, to your point about just like operating from this thing of like wanting to just like cultivate real relationships and make friends, you know?
And you never know where it's going to go or
These
like what kind of,
conversations probably will have some benefit for like all of us in like some kind of marketing way, but like it's been mostly just fun to talk as friends and like get to know each other better.
yeah.
Um, yeah. So
Fuck yeah.
you also did like what Michael did to allow like you and I to get to know each other in a sense. Like you kind of did that for me and Sam. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, man. I can continue connecting and befriending because it just like makes life better in every conceivable way,
Yeah.
including a bunch of unexpected ways. Like it's just, yeah, it's just a good way to live, it seems.
Yeah. Hmm. Well,
I think that with that, it's probably time to call it close and go eat
yeah.
some dinner. And
Yeah. That literally was the last question.
yeah,
Thanks, Rob.
thanks, demonic.
That was funny. I was thinking about this with the, because when I say it, I think it's like demonic,
Yeah, it is.
like, and
Yeah,
so it's like it could be demonic, daemonic, or since I actually cut the marketing part out of my bio,
mm,
it's just money now with IFS and focusing. But like you could also shorten my name and it's just the money, D money,
big D, big
big
D money.
money. Yeah. Monic is all about the money. um, yeah, but um,
Thanks, big D.
yeah, in so many ways, it's like the demonic thing and the ungated thing are like talking about, and it's crazy because those names like pre-existed our knowing each other, but like they are talking about so much of the same
The same thing.
essential
Yeah,
phenomenon. Yeah.
And it's funny. I've been talking about the daimon, or I don't know, it has a bunch of different names, but like,
Yeah.
that essential spirit
Yeah.
that knows who we're capable of being. Like it feels like the thing that drives a lot of where I'm at now. And it's like the part of me that wants to break the pattern. Like, so it's all the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kindred. Okay, man.
It's a good one. And
Yeah.
you didn't roast me nearly as much as I was
Yeah.
expecting.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Neither.
I was like, I'm only like 2 out of 10 on the Rob got roasted scale. So do better.
Uh, better. Okay. Challenge accepted. Ready. Get ready. Fire coming.
Yeah.
Uh,
I haven't read all the comments in the side of this yet, so maybe there's more like roasty stuff in there. But
there's more roasty stuff in there, but at the same time, like this was coming from a spot of like literally not having talked to you since you finishing AOA and not really knowing where you're at emotionally.
yeah,
And so a lot of like this was responding to the the sentiment that was in the article, not the sentiment that you have now.
yeah.
So
How would you rate my sentiment on a scale from
two out
1
of
to
10.
fucking awesome? Fuck. Oh no.
Two out of 10.
Well, let me ask you that question in a more like sincere way, which is like some of the concerns that you had around the manifesto and the anger and the maybe the judgmentality of it
Yeah.
are have some of those been put to bed by like this conversation, or where you think I'm at now?
Yeah. Very much so. I
I just
think
want us to
because
all love each other, man.
I think it was like, and because part of what you said was that you didn't even really realize until more recently how angry the manifesto sounded. And um what was I going to say about that? Just that like my my hangups around it were that it seemed more angry than you seemed to realize.
Yeah.
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 And now, but yeah, now it seems like you can see it a new way. Um, yeah, and that was like maybe part of the, like the roastiness of all these comments that I brought was like sort of like this desire that I had to be like, Rob, like, do you see like how
Yeah.
it was coming through?
Yeah. It's also fascinating to me that like you're literally the only person I think who's called me out for that.
Mm,
Um and it on the flip side, I've had like more praise than I know what to do with people who are like, holy fuck, this is the greatest thing I've ever read. And it spoke
yeah,
to me in a deeper way.
yeah,
And it goes back to that part of our conversation of like there are a lot of people who are at a similar stage to me who needed to hear exactly this at this moment in time. Um, Whereas maybe you're a little bit more advanced with all your focusing and your internal family systems, and I don't
I mean,
know.
after that tweet where Michael tagged you on, which was, I believe it was last year, if there was a rehab designed for marketers, I would check in. So the whole thing being like, I feel deeply fucked up by marketing and like
Yeah,
I need to resolve and heal this shit. So like I've been through it,
yeah.
been through the
And
fire, that for real.
increasingly, I feel like I'm coming out the other end of that fire.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Likewise. As
but
good
yeah.
as to be. And who knows what's next? Because we're not abandoning marketing.
No,
We're
I'm about to start marketing harder than I ever have. Like,
exactly.
but
Which,
from love.
yeah. From love. That's a corny thing to say.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I agree that it's corny, but I also very much believe that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Marketing from a place of love is like a very different thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah, man. All right.
All right.
Let's wrap it. I'm gonna go pay attention to my cat, feed
Okay.
him, feed myself.
Cool. Play some
Word.
guitar.
Mm.
Sweet man.
Yeah.
Thanks for this. It's been a blast.
Word, man.
Looking
Let me
forward
know.
to
It's
your conversations.
yeah. All more conversations, and I want to be roasted more. Turn up the heat on me, baby.
All right.
I'm ready.
All right. I'll think about how to do that.
Yeah.
All right, dude.
Cilantro's the worst. That's my last call. What?
Let me just end the recording first.